I'd like to call to order the November 8th, 2020 Henderson County Board of Public Education Board meeting. At this moment, we lost one of our very own this past weekend, or last week, and it's been weighing heavily on all of us. Miss Tina Gordon, who was a bus driver for us for the past 10 years, and a beloved part of our Henderson County Public School family. So I would like to take this moment to recognize her with a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Now would you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I heard those little ones. That's awesome. Great job, guys. Great job. All right. To get us started, I will need an approval for the agenda. Someone like to make a motion?
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Agenda is approved. Next up is going to be our program highlight, the historic Johnson Farm update. Ms. Mandy Gibson, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Craven. And again, I'd like to say a welcome to Miss Mandy Gibson. I'm not Mandy Gibson. Yes, you're lucky to have.
What happened there?
You're lucky to have the real thing. But we are proud for a program highlight to share. One of the most important partnerships that we have in our school system is the historic Johnson Farm and what it represents to our community and what it represents to our school families. And we're very, very fortunate to have Miss Mandy Gibson at the helm as the farm manager there and leading the work instructionally and otherwise. And so we're proud to be able to share this with you as we do each year about the activities that are taking place at the farm and the work that's being done there. And so again, we welcome and say thanks for being with us today, Miss Gibson.
Thank you for having me. For those that may or may not know, Henderson County Public Schools owns a historic site right here in Henderson County, historic Johnson Farm. In 1978, when Vernon Johnson died, he and his brother had decided that they were going to leave the 15 acres and 10 historic buildings to Henderson County Public Schools because they did not have any descendants to leave the farm to. I try to come here once a year and give you all an update on what has happened. Last year, I thought you might be a little preoccupied with stuff, so I decided to wait. So it's been about 2 years since I've been here. So I'm excited to share some of the stuff we've done in those past 2 years. Oh, let's see. Okay, so one thing that we transitioned to in March of 2020 was virtual programs, something that we had never done before. So in March and April and May of that year, and then all of last year, I did 40 virtual programs for over 865 students, the majority of which were here in Henderson County. I also recorded 15 different YouTube programs telling the history of the farm, and those are all still available on our YouTube channel. We've gotten lots of people to learn about the history that may otherwise have not been able to come to the farm physically. We're continuing to do these virtual programs because sometimes schools can't make it to the farm, and it's a good opportunity to teach them a little bit about the farm history. Because we couldn't do our big festivals over the past year and a half, we pivoted just like everyone else. We did a couple of drive-through events where visitors drove through and picked up ice cream and a craft for kids. We did one last summer and one last fall, and each of those we had over 200 people come through in the span of a couple of hours, just letting people know that we were still there. And in these pictures, you can see some of our junior interpreters, which is our middle school volunteer club. We have middle school students from the whole county that come out about once a month and meet and volunteer at the farm, and they help with events. And it's just a lot of fun, and visitors love when they come and see these young people helping out. Let's see. Another thing we did was create these time traveler baskets, which were full of different activities that people could do from home, history, science, a little bit of everything based, and those were very popular. We sold 45 in the summer, and then we made a different winter one, and we sold 32 last year. And then Christmas last year was a little bit different, but we did still decorate the house, and we had 63 visitors on guided tours and 86 visitors on self-guided tours. And one of the really cool things was because of the hybrid learning schedule, a lot of the junior interpreters were able to help out in the afternoons. And so they were actually able to help with tours, which is something that during a normal school year, they wouldn't be able to do. So that was really fun. And then also, well, I guess moving into 2021, we had the most camps we've ever had. We had 4 different week-long day camps, 1 during spring break and 3 during the summer. 3 of the 4 of those we partnered with the Arts Council of Henderson County, so we were able to open it up to a wider, or to more students, and we had 91 campers this year. So we will continue to do that, and it's always a lot of fun. And then this summer, we were part of the Summer Learning Field Trip program, so we did 11 field trips. We had 389 students come out to the farm, and that was the most summer field trips we've ever done before, so that was exciting. One of my personal projects, I'm still going through the archives that the Johnson brothers left. We have about 20 of those boxes that you see on the left side of the right picture, as well as tons of historic photographs. And I'm trying to create finding aids, which you see on the left, so that hopefully people can use our archives as research, for research purposes. Hopefully students can use the primary sources for projects that they're working on. And then finally, just a few other things that have been happening. This past year, we were able to have 5 different interns from UNC Asheville and from Furman help out, which was a huge help. So this summer, we had 3 Furman interns that helped with camps and with field trips. So I'd love to continue those intern programs. We also have had a number of former Johnson Farm guests that grew up coming to the farm in the summers, if you know a little bit about the history of the farm. So they came back and they shared their stories, which just helps us share the story with everyone else. We had a new program called Farm School, which is hands-on learning for homeschoolers. We had a session in the spring that had about 8 students, I think, and then we did a different session this fall, and we had to schedule another day because it sold out. So we're going to continue that as well. And then we're in the middle of fall field trip season. We have actually 13. I just scheduled another one today for December 1st. So we'll have done 13 this fall, and 7 of those are HCPS schools. And then finally, we are gearing up for Christmas. We're doing some candlelight tours as well as our regular daytime tours. So I hope some of you all can join us for those. So I just want to say thank you for all of your support. And are there any questions?
Questions from the board?
Sorry, not really a question, just a comment. We get your emails and they're great. I mean, everything you're doing at the farm is just fabulous. And the way you do those emails with the pictures so that we can go through and see them, they're great. So I appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you.
Keep those up.
Thank you, I will.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, next is going to be board chair observations. I have 2 observations today. One is going to be just a shout out to the 3-time Hendersonville High School women's tennis team winning state again yesterday, I believe. So congrats to them. And also, being that Veterans Day is upon us, we have some slides that I'd like to show, and if Dr. Bryant would cue those up for us, please. These are of some of our folks that work here in our school system.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Craven. And members of the board, if I could, I'd like to read each of these names individually. These are men and women who have served our great nation and also serve our school system. And one of the things that we did was we wanted to call these names out loud. We wanted to recognize them very publicly, and so we actually gave any member of our school system who is currently working the opportunity to share with us the service that they've provided our nation by branch. And we'll be recognizing these as part of our Veterans Day recognitions throughout this week as part of our public information and information out. And so if I might, I'll go through these real quickly. Captain Gary Bay from Upward Elementary, Master Sergeant Michael Jensen serving at North Henderson High School, Staff Sergeant David Jordan at Clear Creek Elementary School, Master Sergeant Brenda Mathers in our Human Resources Department, Senior Airman Tony McMinn serving at Hellendale Elementary School, Colonel Eric Runquist at North Henderson High School, Technical Sergeant William Wallace, West Henderson High School, Sergeant Veda Williams at Fletcher Elementary School. Having served with the U.S. Army, Staff Sergeant Keith Deese at West Henderson, Specialist Michael Gehring with the School Resources Officer with our Sheriff's Office, Specialist Josh Grasso as part of our Transportation Services Department, Sergeant Lisa Holland, Flat Rock Middle School, Sergeant Lonnie Hunter at Rugby Middle School, Staff Sergeant Arthur Kelly. Again, you see at the Career Academy, several tours there. Sergeant First Class Fred Klump, he's the director of our Transportation Services. Sergeant Autumn Lowe at West Henderson High School. Commander Sergeant Major David Masillo with West Henderson High School, leading our JROTC program. Specialist Matthew Metcalf, also a school resource officer with our system. First Lieutenant Kent Parent, who is our Director of Capital Projects. Having served with the U.S. Navy, Communications Technical Petty Officer Second Class Neil Caulfield at Rugby Middle School. Builder Chief Patrick Kling at Clear Creek Elementary School. Commander Fred Lyda, serving at Apple Valley Middle School. Engine Man Petty Officer Third Class Sandra Mood with Apple Valley Middle. Petty Officer Second Class Julie Shoemaker at Etowah Elementary School. With the U.S. Coast Guard, Lieutenant Albert Fernandez with Flat Rock Middle School, the U.S. Marine Corps Master Sergeant Danielle Cox, Mills River Elementary School, Captain Lynn Evans at Atkinson Elementary, and Gunnery Sergeant Kevin Mathers, husband to Brenda Mathers, Clear Creek Elementary School. And again, it is with great pride that we recognize the men and women who have served our nation and serve our school system. Those folks deserve a standing ovation, if ever. Yep. And Mr. Craven, thank you for allowing and yielding some of your time in the observations in order that we might again recognize those folks as part of our Veterans Day recognitions this week.
Absolutely, and it's absolutely my pleasure. And would you mind just telling the crowd again a little bit what this board decided to do about 2 years ago as far as compensating those folks as well?
Yes, sir. Well, because service in our armed forces and service to our country means something to this board and means something to this school system. One of the things that this board did was honor that service by giving salary steps to those individuals in order that they would be paid in a commensurate way for service to our nation along the tables that exist within our school system. So oftentimes the only way you earn those salary steps is for having served the state of North Carolina into the retirement system. This board prioritized and said, we're going to honor and recognize your service to our nation in the exact same way. And so we actually pay those folks appropriately on that step, and I think that that was a huge recognition of their service to our country. Thank you for calling that out, sir.
Thank you. All right, next up is going to be board member observations, and I'll start on this side of the room. Do you ladies have anything you'd like to say, and gentlemen? Oh, yes, ma'am.
There's an East High student that we were told about that had a perfect score on an AP exam. That is
West High.
Or West, I thought it was East, West, sorry, West High. That's awesome. That is just unbelievable, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's Caroline Maxim. She's awesome. It was AP Research.
Yeah, a capstone class, right? It's very, very, very difficult.
Could I add something to that just real quickly?
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
sure,
Yes, sir.
sure.
So when she speaks of that, Caroline Maxon, currently a student at UNC Chapel Hill, West Henderson grad, perfect score on AP Research. There were 375 out of 24,000 students who took that test worldwide. So when you talk about the recognition that that beholds, this is the 1% of the 1% in terms of what's being done there. And so thank you for calling that out. Again, Caroline Maxon, proud graduate, West Henderson High School, and again, perfect score AP Research. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, absolutely.
Well, I don't have something that good, but a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to Dr. Bryant, and I said, how's your weekend or Friday or whatever? He said, man, Friday was so good. He said, I went to go teach. And I said, you did? He said, yes, I loved it. I was like, man, I would love to do that. And he was like, I was like, but I'm not a teacher. I'm not. He's like, well, I'll ask at the principal meeting and see if anyone is dumb enough to say, yeah. So we did, and I've been going to Clear Creek for the last 2 or 3 weeks, Wednesdays, from 9 to 11. And let me tell you what, those second graders, I mean, there's pure emotion, these kids. I mean, when you got to be too cool in middle grade or high school to hug somebody. But you know, I go to pick them up, and they're like, Mr. Eekhoff, and they come up and they give me a hug, and it's just like, oh my gosh. I mean, I could see why you teach. I mean, it's just, it's awesome. I wish I could do it more, but I can't. But it's just awesome, and for all the teachers out there, and you know, it's great. I love it.
Hats off to Dr. Bryant for that. He did take a half a day out of his schedule to go substitute, correct? And a full day? A full day.
Fifth grade in the morning.
That's right, fifth grade in the afternoon. And so
Little ones.
I'm not sure there's many substitute or superintendents that are doing that
Yeah.
across this state. So we appreciate you for taking that time.
I just wanted to have a shout out to our amazing bus drivers, especially this week. I think this week shook us all. We know that they have such responsibility and so much in their hands every single day. They're quite underpaid. But I just wanted to recognize that we see what they do every day, and they're awesome.
Thank you. Dr. Travis, anything? All right. We're going to be moving on to the exciting part of the program. All right, so we're going to get to the public comments. Before we get started, I'm going to go through the digital public comments that we received and kind of how they were grouped. They're kind of, it's a little bit long, so bear with me. We had 123 total digital public comments, 23 to continue the mask mandate until 5 and 11-year-olds can be vaccinated, 37 to continue the mask mandate, 1, continue all efforts to keep kids safe, 1, spring break change in school calendar, 1, fully fund the Leandro plan, 17 to end the mask mandate, 6 to end the mask mandate and end quarantines, 17 optional masks, 2 social emotional learning, 3 social emotional learning, critical race theory, and no mask mandate, 1, stop trying to control kids, 2, no mask mandates and more time for students to eat lunch, 1, freedom of voice for their children, 3, in mask mandate and don't require COVID-19 vaccine for students. 2, no to COVID-19 vaccination for children. 1, optional mask and social emotional learning, critical race theory. 1, end mask mandate, end quarantines, and critical race theory. 1, social emotional learning, into mask mandate, don't require COVID vaccination for children. 1, optional mask and social emotional learning. 1, optional mask and don't require COVID-19 vaccination for children, and 1 on the panorama survey and no mask mandates. I mean, that's kind of all over the place. Today we have about 45 public comments. As you know, we typically take 30 minutes, but of course I'm not going to shrink it down to that much. We're going to do 1 minute apiece for each of these, unless they are a student, and they will get the full 3 minutes for their public comment. One thing that I'm going to ask, and I'd like to ask it just once, okay, is that when someone's speaking, whether you like what they're saying, or you don't like what they're saying, let them speak their piece. Nobody in here is going to agree on everything. None of us, ever. And I know that we are all very passionate about these topics. But one thing that I will not tolerate in here and in this meeting is people yelling at people for expressing their opinions in front of the public. And as long as we can all keep it cool right there, I'm cool. We'll all get through this and we'll make it on the other side. Can we do that? All right. First up, if we can put 1 minute on the clock, Matthew. It's going to be Ann Corbin, and it's going to be followed by Deborah Barwick. Welcome, Ms. Corbin. Your minute begins when you get to the podium.
First, I just wanted to say thank you, board and senior leadership, for approving the change in calendar for later this week and giving us the opportunity to either self-care or plan and leaving that up to us. We are very grateful. I'm an ESL teacher, by the way. Second, this board has continued to do what is right for all children throughout this pandemic. I urge you to continue to mandate masks until the majority of children who want to be vaccinated can be. You did such a fabulous job getting the staff vaccinated. Please consider a school-based vaccination clinic for those who would like to be vaccinated. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Barwick, going to be followed by Beth Campbell. Welcome.
First of all, I want to thank the board for their continued commitment to the children of Henderson County. I know you all have a tough job and you're very much appreciated. I'm here as a nurse, but more importantly, I'm here as a grandparent. I hear people say from time to time that we need to learn to live with COVID, and that is absolutely correct because it is not going to go away. However, living with COVID at this time does not mean we take our masks off. We know cold weather is coming. We know that with increased cold weather, we have more activities indoors. And we also know that taking our mask off in cold weather can help promote the COVID virus. I am asking the board to please consider masking of our children at least till the end of 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth Campbell, followed by Courtney McCall. Welcome, Ms. Campbell.
Thank you. First of all, I do want to say thank you to Dr. Bryant. You heard us. You heard many of us when it came to Panorama and the social and emotional learning problem that we just went through. So I appreciate you hearing what we said and taking immediate action to end that program and to investigate the problems that went along with it. So thank you very much for doing that. It's the first time that we as parents have actually felt heard. It's the first time that we've gotten our returned emails, phone calls where y'all listened. You know, you haven't listened to the almost 200 people that have signed this that want masks off, to the 300 plus people who marched through the streets of Hendersonville a few weeks ago asking to hear us. The 440 something people who have asked for Ms. Caskey's resignation for her behavior. We're asking you to hear us now. And if y'all have not read The Kite Runner, I encourage you to look at page 75 because the rape scene is particularly interesting for 14-year-old students.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Ms. McCall, followed by Anthony Cantonia.
It's time for some answers and accountability. I want an answer for why you felt the need to ask my fifth graders how they treated people of different races and ethnicities. My students talk about Pokemon, soccer, the birthday party they went to over the weekend. You know what they don't talk about? Their white friend, their black friends, their brown friends. They're just their friends. They're kids and don't pay attention to things like this until you point it out. Although I guess one positive from forcing our students to still wear masks is that between the mask and the hoods and jackets, you can't even tell what race anybody is anymore. I want an answer as to why you didn't research a company that has blatantly used data from their confidential surveys in the past. A company that felt the need to ask our middle schoolers about people of different races in their classes, something they have no control over, and if their classmates have close relationships with people of other races. I think they have enough to worry about trying to put the past 2 years of hell behind them without having to decide if their teachers and classmates are racist. I may butt heads with some of my colleagues about things like mask and homework, but I can guarantee you I have never questioned whether or not they loved and cared about all of their students equally. I want an answer as to why 2 days after the blanket apology, my child could still access that survey in his Google Classroom when he was opted out in the first place.
Anthony Cantonia, followed by Leela Hudson. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, board members. Thank you for your service. Appreciate that, as we all do. My name is Anthony Catania. I'm a resident of Mills River and the father of two daughters, ages 6 and 8. Your tenure is historic. You will be judged on whether you are tone deaf or have perfect pitch as you listen to the genuine concern of parents. Let's be honest. If mandates continue, you will be left with a public institution that is little more than a political indoctrination camp representing the far left. There will be a mass exodus from our public schools by more than half the country. Think about that. It's heartbreaking. So let me pose a few questions which I asked you to address candidly without euphemism or doublespeak. Number one, will you commit to excluding social and emotional learning under any title or form in the curricula? Will you vote for optional COVID vaccination? Will you vote for optional masking? I ask that each of you state your position in today's meeting so we can all have transparency as to your individual positions. Thank you.
Thank you. Leela Hudson, followed by Megan Lanning. Welcome, Ms. Hudson. You get full 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm a sixth grader at Apple Valley Middle School. I like my school and love being an AVMS cheerleader. What I don't love is wearing a useless mask all day long. Nobody wears the mask correctly, and only a few students say they don't mind them. The majority of students hate them and think they should be optional. I want a normal middle school experience and like being able to go to school dances and other fun events. You board members that are saying no to mask optional are ruining that for all of us kids. None of the normal stuff is going to happen until you say the word yes to optional. The masks are nasty. I see kids doing all kinds of things with them. Just one example is them stomping on them at recess and then putting them back on their faces. I love special needs kids and playing with them outside at recess. These same kids don't even recognize me in the halls with my mask on. This is sad. I have a teacher who refused to help me because I had my mask down, because I choose to breathe. God gave me that right, and I'm going to keep that right. People of ages 5 and up can be vaccinated if they choose to be now. So why are us kids having to wear a face diaper all day long? We have tried it your way wearing a mask, and now it needs to be tried our way with mask optional. Fair is fair, right? The COVID numbers are way down, and this needs to stop now. Thank you.
Megan Lanning, followed by Crystal Watson.
I want to know who is going to be held accountable, who's responsible for the distribution to my children that I opted out of in regards to the SEL survey. Is the blame going to be passed on to Panorama? How do we know, as the parents of our children, something like this isn't going to happen with something even worse in the future? This is unacceptable and this is wrong. Trust has been lost in our Henderson County public school system, and I want to know what you all plan to do to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. As far as masks, our cases have decreased tremendously. Masks should be optional. I've seen several members of our board, teachers, and parents that are up here advocating for masks that are out and about in the community, like packed homecoming football games and restaurants with no mask on. Seems like it's a more of a do as I say, not as I do. Pretty hypocritical of you all, don't you think?
Crystal Watson, followed by Sarah Hudson. Welcome.
When will enough be enough? The virus isn't going anywhere, no different than the flu. We have got to come out of the shadows and start living again. Nothing makes any sense. Kids are forced to wear a mask, yet inmates in prison and residents in the nursing homes are not. We have the masks, we have the stores, we have the concerts, we have the football games, we have everything, and it's not enforced. It's just encouraged. You can wear a mask if you want, but it's your body, your choice. I don't understand how we can sit here and say it's science when it's not science. It's simply, it doesn't work. If the mask worked, then the mask we wouldn't have COVID. We wouldn't have the numbers. We wouldn't have all of that. We don't need to enforce it. We need to give it optional.
Thank you. Sarah Hudson, followed by Karen Oldenburg. Oh, is that? Welcome, Ms. Hudson.
I just want to say, I don't know if y'all have heard that Blue Ridge Community College went back mask optional today. So I'll throw that out there. Also, I keep hearing let's go by the science. Well, according to two researchers at Stanford University, they did studies through 11 countries. Children ages 0 to 19 have a 0.0027% chance of death from COVID-19. There's no use in our kids wearing these masks anymore. Also, I wanted to point out Stacy Caskey mentioned Lancaster County, South Carolina last time we were here, and how one student and 2 teachers had passed away from COVID. Well, I did some studying into that. The student she was talking about, a high school student named Andrew, died 4 days before school even started. So he did not contract the virus at school. Also, the 2 teachers that passed 1 week into September, and they had been hospitalized. So most likely they did not catch COVID at school either. I just wanted to make that a point because you really can't compare that with the same numbers as ours.
Thank you. Karen Oldenburg, followed by Crystal Cauley. Welcome.
Thank you for your service, and officers, I appreciate your service as well. Passed by our Assembly and supported by our Lieutenant Governor, House Bill 324 was yet vetoed by Governor Cooper. House Bill 324, in essence, prohibits teachers from promoting, I'm sorry, I left my glasses home, promoting concepts that suggest Americans are inherently racist due to their skin color or any else responsible for actions of their forefathers. In other words, critical race theory. We are here today to have this board assure the Henderson County residents that critical race theory ideology or any version of it is not currently present in our schools, and to commit to us that it is not and will not be taught in the future. When we recognize that our elected representatives have turned a deaf ear to us, we, like Virginia, will vote those representatives out of office and replace them with individuals that respect their constituents, our Constitution, and our American values. Thank you.
Crystal Cauley, followed by Nathan Conley. Welcome, Ms. Cauley.
Hello, I'm Crystal Cauley. I created Black History Collective of Henderson County, North Carolina. I would like to say that I know across the United States, we see a lot of division about critical race theory. And I'd like to say that I am a native here. I love Henderson County. I had art commissioned, and it's titled Legacy. And so it's the shape of Henderson County that's been uplifted by African American hands. African Americans have contributed to the prosperity of this county. I feel that instead of critical race theory, we need to teach Henderson County history. I have been campaigning this for 3 years. We need to teach Henderson County history. Thank you.
Thank you. Nathan Conley, followed by, I think it's Jesse Gray.
Benjamin.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hey, Benjamin.
I have something I would like to distribute it to the members. Is that possible?
Give it to our attorney right there for us.
Okay. Here you go. This is a graph. The source data comes from healthcare.gov, which is official government source. This is data from last winter, basically, 2020. It shows the hospitalizations per 100,000 in the 25 most stringent lockdown and mask requirement states and the hospitalizations for the 25 least stringent states. Now, can anyone tell me what anything interesting about that graph? And I have more. I would like to get some. Actually, I gave them all out. I get them back. They're the same line. So your masks didn't reduce any hospitalizations in the left coast, in the strict states, the mask mandates do not stop transmission. Thank you.
Thank you. Pick those up. Mr. Rhodes or Mr. Social, I'll have the rest of those for you that you can have. Perfect, thank you. Jesse Gray, is it?
Yes.
Okay, followed by Alyssa Norman. Welcome, sir.
My name's Jesse Gray. I'm a husband, a father, a business owner, and a native of Henderson County. We appreciate what you guys are doing for our community and our children. Their safety is my biggest concern, and we know it is yours as well. According to the CDC website, there have been 206 children that have died from COVID between ages of 0 to 4, 5 to 18. There have been 474 as of November 3rd. There's also something else we found on our website that should have an immediate response. This is killing our children 10 times the rate of COVID. What I'm referring to is drowning. Accidental drowning is killing our kids at an alarming rate. Per CDC, there are approximately 3,960 kids die every year from drowning, and there are 8,080 non-fatal drownings. In this past year, 10 times the amount of children have died from drowning than they have from COVID. We need to do something about it. I think we need to be all wearing life jackets. In class, when they go to the stores, when they go to ball games, they should all be wearing life jackets for their safety and the safety of others. No, and it's absurd. The call to action is ridiculous. Let's unmask our children. As a parent, we would like to ask for parents to be able to decide if, of course, we want, the children, if you want to wear a mask, that's acceptable. It's your choice. That's all we're asking. Let it be our choice for the parents, for our own children, please.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Alyssa Norman, followed by McKenna Norman. Ms. Norman?
Hi, thank you. I'm here because I'm deeply concerned that we have become so comfortable with the idea of our roles as parents being taken away from us. I understand that we've had to consider many things when trying to navigate through a health pandemic. I'm a nurse on a medical surgical floor where I've seen COVID patients this entire pandemic, so I'm very aware and educated on it. I'm not suggesting that we should ignore COVID or saying that I am anti-mask or vaccine, but I am absolutely against the forcing of parents to make certain decisions for their children. How are these decisions actually being made for the health and safety of our children when schools consistently have no soap, paper towels, or dryers that work properly to wash their hands? How can I feel comfortable when we are allowing people to come in and survey our children with questions saturated with CRT content without our consent and our approval as parents? God chose me to be my kid's mother, and that is an honor and privilege that I do not take lightly. So I will never be okay with people trying to dictate to me how to do my job as their mother, no matter what the topic is, whether it's masks, vaccines, SEL. You may suggest it, you may offer it, but please do not try to force it. Thank you.
And McKenna Norman, she is a student, so she'll get 3 minutes, Matthew. Welcome.
Hi. I'm McKenna, a 7th grade student in Henderson County. There seems to be a lot of adults fighting about what happens to me in my body, so I thought it'd be good for you to hear from me personally about how I feel about all of this fighting and confusion. My parents have raised me to respect authority and the importance of listening to my teachers and fellow peers, but they have also raised me to have a mind of my own, to think for myself, to have courage to stand up for what I believe in, even if it's tough. So what am I supposed to do when my school system is telling me to do something that my parents don't want me to do? How am I supposed to react when adults are telling me to wear a mask, get a vaccine, take a survey with inappropriate questions on it, and when everybody else is doing it but me, and I feel uncomfortable in my own classroom about it? What do you want me to do about that feeling that even other kids may feel? I'm being put in impossible and uncomfortable situations. Why should I trust other adults more than my parents to make decisions that affect me medically and emotionally? I'm not against masks or vaccine, but I'm against people making decisions for my parents that I don't believe in or that affect me more than they can affect even other people. And a question about the masks. I feel that even at lunch when we're sitting near each other and we're breathing each other's air and we're not even 1 foot away from each other, but we can't when we're in our classrooms and we're very far away. Thank you for your service and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Next is Daniel Andriotta, followed by Rick Bruce. Welcome, Mr. Andriotta.
Thank you. Thank you for
noticing and recognizing veterans. My dad was a World War II Marine, so I'm proud of them. Recently, I've asked several local residents who hold various offices and are in various positions of service if they have a line that says at what point they rise up and say, no, this is too far, this is not right. Or will they, no matter what comes down from Washington, D.C. or Raleigh, North Carolina, simply rubber stamp it and pass it on? Would they ever be willing, based on conviction, to say, stop, hit the pause button? I'm not sure what this will look like, but we've got to rethink this. Loudoun County, Virginia, for example, didn't have a line, and the worst happened. So perhaps we must each individually soul search and find that line. And if we never stand up for it, then it's not a line. If we're not very careful, one day we could have government that, instead of being of, by, and for people, is against the people. Thank you.
Rick Bruce is going to be followed by Jill Denny.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Richard Baruth. I'm a new resident of North Carolina. My remarks are not directed at any of you individually because I don't know any of you individually. This is the year of the parent, which was recently confirmed by the election in Virginia. A huge mistake by a school board not reporting a sexual assault is inconceivable to me. Federal and state governments, combined with some school boards, have imposed vaccination and mask mandates, which in my opinion will be quickly overturned in court, and they will be. However, the idea that a government entity would even consider such an intrusion on students and employees only reflects upon their arrogance and bad judgment. Sending children to school dressed as bank robbers, compounded by having a government agency overstep their authority by threatening to terminate their parents' employment, places double jeopardy on many of those families. There is no reliable proven study proving the efficacy of a mask. Last of all, we only have the word of a tired old doctor who keeps changing his stories every week. He's also in cahoots with a senile presidential pretender who can barely read a teleprompter.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. Jill Denny, followed by Ethan Doyle. Welcome, Ms. Denny.
I come here today to kindly ask you to make masks optional. I am not here to argue science, political belief, quarantine rules, or funding. Simply, I'm asking because I am a parent. Over the years, I've seen the school try to become everything for a student. This has happened slowly and originally good with good intent. Unfortunately, it has created a heck of a traffic jam. To do the best for everything, every child takes a village. The schools cannot be the role of the educator, the doctor, the spiritual leader, the government, and the parent. It's not fair to me, it's not fair to you. The best way out of this traffic jam is to stay in your lane. I will be the parent. I will make a lane for my doctor to guide them through the medical lane. I will make a lane for my pastor to guide them through a spiritual lane. I will make a lane for my government and guide them through my voting lane. To make this happen, you must be bold and stand up to certain programs and funding and say thank you, but no thank you. We are a school system that focuses on education and focuses on letting our parents be parents, how they feel fit. We are blessed to be in a strong community full of walks of life. We are blessed to have the best educators. So schools have to stop trying to do it all. We have multiple people willing to help us. We have a community foundations to help financially. Together we can disagree and have conversations to move us forward. We must all get in our lane to get out of this traffic jam. It won't be easy. It won't be fast.
Thank you. Ethan Doyle, followed by Lexi Schlegel.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Ethan Doyle, and I'm a 9th grade student at West Henderson High School. I wanted to speak to you all about the mask mandate. I feel the mask mandate should be removed and become optional. My fellow students and I sit in class for 7 hours a day, all masked up. These are the same students that take off their masks every single day when the school day ends. And that also goes for sporting events that go on at school. It is an unfair burden for kids to be made to believe they are the issue, because adults are very often seen in public without masks on in large crowds. We have been participating in mask mandates for nearly 2 years now, and they have been proven ineffective time and time again. and it seems like it is more of a political game than public health. Dr. Fauci, the chief medical advisor to the President of the United States, has been known to flip-flop back and forth between this issue. This just goes to show that even those at the very top do not believe in this lie. At this point in time, we have pretty well seen that they are very ineffective because the average cloth mask cannot even keep out a smoke particle, much less than a virus particle. I'm speaking on behalf of my fellow students when I say that we want our freedom of choice back, and we do not wish to participate in mask mandates any longer. It's been stressing us out, and we've had enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Lexi Schlegel, welcome. Pull that right down to there. You know how to do it.
My name is Lexi Schlegel, and I go to Glency Marlowe Elementary, and I got my first shot on Saturday, and I would like it if you please kept masks on until I got my second shot. And the Band-Aid hurts more than the shot.
Thank you, Ms. Schlegel, very much. Sandra, I'm sorry, I think it begins with an E. I can't read the last name, I'm sorry. Followed by Beverly Henderson. Irwin, okay, I know you're probably quick to. No, I couldn't see it, I'm sorry.
I'm a little nervous, and I have this on my phone.
Okay.
In the United States of America, we have the freedom to choose. We choose where we want to live and raise a family. I chose Henderson County, and my children received their education from the Henderson County Public Schools. As board members, you chose to run for this opportunity to be elected to this board. As parents, you choose where your child will receive their education. I'm asking you to give the parents the freedom to choose to mask or unmask their children. There is no one who has a greater interest in their child than a parent. I also believe that the staff should have that freedom as well. Because of the men and women who served and are serving this great country, we have the freedom to choose. I hold 2 folded American flags that were given to our family because of loved ones who chose to serve so that we would have freedom to make choices. Don't let their sacrifice go in vain. Vote to let the parents choose to mask or unmask their children. Thank you.
Thank you. Beverly Henderson, followed by Delania.
Henderson County Board members, thank you for listening. Much of the drama and chaos in our community could be stopped through your influence. Have the courage to stop all mandates. Act constitutionally and reinstate our God-given right to choose. Without choice, our community will decline in all areas. We have stated that you are following current science research. However, science in support of both ends of the spectrum is available. This is why choice, and choice only, is the way to restore the health mentally and physically of our community. Henderson County residents are growing tired. It is predicted that hundreds of local healthcare workers plan to vacate their position in the event that COVID-19 vaccine is required. Please don't allow our school system to take a similar path. Henderson County public school parents, staff, and students are tired. We want our civil rights. Please reinstate them as we have the power to do, as you have the power to do so. May God watch over our community and protect us.
Thank you. Delania, followed by Kami Sullivan. First, can you please tell me your last name?
Lukewitz.
Lukewitz.
Delania
Okay,
Lukewitz.
perfect. Okay.
And I'm going to yield my time to Cami because she has a firsthand experience of quarantining.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
So you're Kami.
I am Cami Sultan-Fuss, yes.
And, all right. Hold on 1 second. Give her 2 minutes. Let me know when you're ready, Matthew. All right, you're ready to go.
Thank you, Board, for your service. I would like to address you today with our recent experience regarding quarantine. This problem has nothing to do with the way the teachers or administration handled the process, as I know it's out of their hands. My children were exposed to COVID last month. Although they never tested positive, they were required to quarantine for 2 full weeks. During this time, my middle and high school students did not have access to any school instruction. Homework assignments did show on Google Classroom, though they could not complete it without having the lessons. The missed 10 days of pre-calculus AP courses, world history, and advanced math is problematic. As you can imagine, every day missed in upper-level math classes puts them far behind. I know the quarantine process is the responsibility of the health department, but I would like to ask the board to reach out to the health department along with parents regarding this concern. I would also like to ask if there's a way to stream upper-level grade classes, since most are lecture-based. This would help keep students on track. My second comment, I would like to again start by thanking the board for hearing parents and dissolving the Panorama and SEL surveys. Thank you to Mr. Egoff for responding to my SEL questions with a tangible source of information on the board's end. With that being said, as a parent, my concern is that Panorama was approved without fully vetting the reputation of the company, how data is collected and stored on our children, as well as the long-term implications of that. Underage children should not have the weight of answering suggestive questions about subjective matters unrelated to core subjects. The way this process was implemented by Panorama is problematic and lends to our students not only taking their focus off of academics, but to also having social scores that may likely follow them to their college entrance applications and into their careers. It seems as if Board Policy Code 3100 lends itself to parents being involved in a committee to oversee curriculum or plan choices. I would like to ask the board to discuss putting together a parental review committee to work with the board together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Julie Schlegel, followed by Beth Stein. Welcome.
Thank you guys so much for your service. We've got a lot of passionate people here, and I can absolutely respect that. We may not all choose the same thing. We may not all choose to vaccinate or to wear masks when we're not at school, but I just want to say this isn't an endless game. We are so close. Christmas is coming. By Christmas, we that want to vaccinate our children can have fully vaccinated children that are protected by the vaccine. After the first shot of vaccine, you have about 40% protection. After the second shot, it goes up to about 90% protection. So I would like to ask the board to please wait until after Christmas break to unmask so that those of us who choose can vaccinate and benefit from that vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth Stein, followed by Vicki Shantz. Welcome, Ms. Stein.
Thank you. Good afternoon, evening at this point. 54 and a half and 70 and a half. Those are the number of days that our schools have been open on the traditional and flex schedule, respectively, to in-person learning. Those are also the number of days that our staff and students have been wearing masks during the school day. Note, they are the same number. Because masks have been required all school year, schools have remained open. Your decisions regarding masking and other precautions have kept our schools open for the 21-22 school years thus far. Please don't let the guard down yet. The availability of vaccines for elementary age students at last is a huge step toward relaxing precautions, but it's too soon to do that now. Children that are vaccinated now, around this time, will not reach the full immunity until 5 weeks after their first dose. So the earliest would be the end of December. It's only 23 and a half or 18 and a half days remaining. We're so close. Please continue to require masks in our schools. Thank you.
Vicki Shantz, followed by Katie Gash.
Greetings. I'm the grandparent of a second grader at Glen Marlow. And the last time I was here, I was physically assaulted outside by a teacher who spoke at this podium. I will not be bullied, and neither should you. This is not about politics. It's about community health. Being an American means you have a social contract, a responsibility to each other. It is not a matter of individual freedom versus at everyone else's cost. If you decide to ignore the basic rules of society, then you need to be out of the grid entirely. The pandemic wasn't a downtrend. We went on a pandemic downtrend last year after 2020, and we're back there again right now. We have 11 months that we've had to cope with this. We need to keep this mandate going at least for another few months until after the holidays. I urge the board to keep your policy in place till next year, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie Gash, followed by Leanne Carnes. Welcome, Ms. Gash.
Dear school board members and central office colleagues, thank you once again for your continued support of the teachers, the staff, the students, and extended community of Henderson County Public Schools. I teach math at HMS, and at the last meeting, several commented about the falling COVID numbers. This is awesome. This is a testament to the success of our policies. And so, instead of questioning the need for masks, I find it imperative that we highlight that these positive trends are all because of the use of masks and the varied precautions we have taken. Masks are not the enemy. COVID is the enemy. I used to run track many, many moons ago, and my track coach, Mr. Green, would always urge us to run through the tape. Not run to the tape, but run through the tape. We are so close. Vaccines are now available for our younger students. Booster shots are being made more readily available. It is therefore my hope that you, as a deciding board, will be cautious. Give our community the chance to get their booster shots, and the younger ones, ages 5 to 11, who wish to be vaccinated, the opportunity to become fully immunized. Let us see what the holiday numbers look like, and then, maybe with the turning of the calendar from 21 to 22, if our numbers are securely within the safety zones and our hospitals not overwhelmed and our nurses not stretched to their breaking points, we can welcome the new year without the need for mask mandates. But until then, let us run through the tape. Thank you.
Leanne Carnes, followed by Maggie Brindle-Watt. Welcome.
Good evening, and I'd like to thank you for your service to the community. But I wish that you would take another look at your SEL program. SEL was put in place for a very good reason in the beginning to help children with disabilities, but now it's being used as a carrying tool for CRT, even if it's been SEL programs that you have used for a long time. I know that you have been using Leader in Me, and it needs to be looked at and revisited, and because it has just as much racial and division, and it teaches it in every subject. And I would appreciate you taking a second look at your choices and make sure that it's a right choice for all the children and not just a select few. Thank you.
Maggie Brindle-Watt, followed by Indion Jackson. Welcome.
So, good afternoon. Today, I would like to address the people of Hendersonville and Henderson County instead of the board members. So, I would like to say that we, the people, hold the power, not these people in front of us. We gave them the power in good faith that they would do what is good and just. Sadly, they have inserted in themselves to divide us, the people of Henderson County. Some of you want to continue our children to have masks, and some of us don't want that. But what is really at stake here is so much more than that. We are now facing the erosion of our right to choose for ourselves. Today, we're talking about masks. Tomorrow, it'll be vaccine and vaccine mandate, which will restrict the right of those who would exercise the right to choose sovereignty over our own body. So today our country is free because of the brave. In this hour, we need those brave men and women. So I ask, are you those brave men and women? Will you stand for freedom today? Thank you.
Right. Indiana Jackson, followed by Karen Bennett. Welcome, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you. All right, so critical race theory. It's literally just American history. It's an intellectual approach to looking at how racism is at the core of our laws and our institutions in America. It's literally just American history. It's not persuasion. It's not a guilt trip or anything like that. It's literally American history. It teaches us that race didn't even exist until a division was needed. Teaching critical race theory will not divide us. Before I go on, I'm just gonna go ahead and end it with this. I think that you all should probably like have a focus group and see what the kids like as far as mask mandate and as far as critical race theory. You were a school board, and so I think it's just important for you to listen to how the kids feel, because us grown-ups have been through a lot. We're all emotional and everything, but the kids, they're pure. Just listen to them and see what they feel.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Karen Bennett, followed by Vance McCraw.
Thanks to all of you, but I would like to give a special thanks to Amy Holt, who never fails to respond when I contact her, and I appreciate that. I'm a retired Henderson County teacher. Currently, I'm employed as a part-time tutor at an elementary school. I am against mask mandates. I am pro-choice, and the choice needs to be given to the parents. Masks are not healthy. Our bodies eliminate what needs to be filtered out. There is more than carbon dioxide in the air we exhale. It is full of germs our body work to expel, not to be collected onto a cloth to rebreathe. The partnership with Panorama created confusion and distrust. This is not what we are about in Henderson County. I have proudly been employed with this system for 34 years. As a middle school teacher, I had at least 100 students per year. I was in tune with my students. I knew who needed extra support, and I became their advocate. A survey is not needed. Teachers know their students. I hope the partnership with Panorama has been completely canceled to avoid more confusion and division. Thank you.
Thank you. Vance McCraw, followed by Wendy Navarez. Welcome.
There were concerns from some parents about SEL being CRT or leading to it. Those parents were told SEL is not CRT, and some mocked them. After receiving the call from Dr. Bryant and reading the survey questions that were not approved by HCPS, it seems that those concerns were valid. Hearing that some students were opted out of the survey but still received it as homework is unacceptable. An apology is a start, but a guarantee it won't happen again will help start a process of regaining trust lost by many parents, including me. We all have to do better, but it should be obvious to anyone paying attention, there are people and organizations using race as a weapon to drive wedges in communities nationwide, including ours. Stop focusing on our differences. Start focusing on what makes us the same. We all bleed red, we're all human, and parents teach your children to treat others like they want to be treated. This Thursday is Veterans Day, and our kids are out of school to honor our veterans. Which veterans are we honoring? Not just white or black or brown veterans. We're honoring all veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy Navarez, followed by Jean Leon.
I'm going to take this off just because it's hard to talk with it on. I'm Wendy Navarez. I'm running for Congress in the now District 14. I want to say that I appreciate all of you for your service. I know what a sacrifice it is. You're in the crosshairs, literally, of of what's going on in our country right now, because what do we care more about than our kids, right? I am a Navy veteran, 11 years, and the reason I didn't stay in 20, because I always get that question, is because I had 2 children, and I deployed several times, and unfortunately became a single parent. So with that said, how many people here have kids in the schools actually here? Okay, and you can put your hand down. And how many people are in ASOP? Okay. So I'm in ASOP. I substitute teach. I've been doing it for 2 years. I love doing ESL because I love the kids that love you forever, right? But I do want to say that small government is needed. If you want to know what's going on in the classroom, you really need to sign up and volunteer in the schools.
Thank
and
you, Ms.
that's
Navarez.
for everybody else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jean Leon, followed by Philip Hanna. Jean, Jeanleon. Going once, going twice. He's gone. Philip Hanna is our final speaker today. Welcome, Mr. Hanna.
I learned a lot just listening to people, so I just have a couple of questions. But first, I want to say thank you very much for what I heard in the beginning as far as your point of view about veterans. I think it's wonderful what you're doing, what you said. I'm a veteran from the Air Force, and I'm very grateful to have served. And I think it's wonderful the way you said what you said. Excuse me. Am I right in understanding that you are the people who decide whether these things are taught or prevail in the schools, CRT and all that kind of stuff?
This is a monologue. This is you talking to us. We're not going to respond back.
Okay. Okay, well, I think I learned a little bit about my questions, and I'll figure out another way to get them answered. Thank you.
Email us. Thank you very much, sir. All right, that concludes our public comment portion for today. So next up is going to be the consent agenda. I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second. Ms. Holt is a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, new business. Now, here we go. Dr. Bryant, the first, we have no old business today, so we'll skip that. We're going to get to new business, which is going to be the current face covering guidance and policy. We're going to add your return to learn a report in there with it. So with that, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Craven. And as they bring up the slides again, I just remind the board and the public, part of the opportunity here is that the current legislation requires that you evaluate and take a position on the current guidance that's operating the school system. So we're going to work through some slides that you're familiar with. Please stop me, as I know you have seen each of these many, many times. So if you have specific questions about the information that I'm sharing with you, we've always started with the Harvard Global Health Institute information, looking and tracking the trend data and understanding where that's been moving. And we have been talking most recently about how that data has been trending down. Most recently, we've seen it trend down in a bit of a plateau right around 20. That number is 18.6 as of today. And in the state of North Carolina, that number is, 18.9 in North Carolina, 15.6 in North Carolina, 18.9 in Henderson County. The perspective we shared with you in the past is looking at where this information plateaued. This is from August 29th. You're looking here at September the 9th. Then again, October the 7th when we last met, and now on November the 6th, as you again have seen the spike in this data and the trend information coming down. DHHS and the County Alert System have operated with a community transmission map as a way of understanding what's taking place in our state. Again, it calculates high transmission, substantial, moderate, and then low areas. And then the most recent subset, note please that this data is just through Thursday, November the 4th. That's the most recent and current available at the time of the presentation. Still shows us in the high transmission area with a couple of other areas of substantial and moderate in our neighborhoods. Our district dashboard has been operating, although we've sunsetted the calls associated with daily notifications for school-affected cases. We still publish the dashboard on a regular basis. We provide the district-wide notifications for clusters. We've had none since the last time we've met. And of course, we've been publishing on this same COVID dashboard the number of total cases for the week and then the number of resulting quarantines, and we'll look at that in just a few minutes. What to expect is a similar infographic. Just note that this has been updated as of August 22nd, again, when we sunsetted those daily notification calls to our individual school communities. Our current operations are those that you're familiar with. Per the board's direction at our last meeting, we have a situationally specific exception for grades kindergarten through third grade for direct and explicit phonics instruction. Recognizing the importance of being able to see how your mouth is supposed to move when learning to read, the board gave us that specific instruction, and we have been providing it since our last meeting. Face coverings, however, are required at this current time in all other locations and in all other settings, and they're required when we're in transportation settings. Face covering requirements across the state of North Carolina have been evolving. I've showed you the picture of this map throughout this period of time. Again, recognizing that required is what you see in blue, optional is what you see in red. The green areas, just for clarification, are counties in which there is a county school system and a city school system. So you can see the O and the R for optional and required there, and then based on school designations in Surrey County, and then based on vaccination designations in Hyde County there at the end. Specific to Senate Bill 654, which is how we opened today, we are required to adopt a policy, and the governing body, this board, is required to vote on it at least once a month as to whether or not that policy should be modified. With regard to the Strong Schools Toolkit, it was last updated on October the 5th. You've seen this slide before. Again, it talks about what can be considered by the board, making recommendations along the line of should and could. Specifically, it gives the board operational flexibility to be responsive to the current conditions to make decisions according to that. And then again, you see these strategies that are in the should category suggested that if they're not implemented, they create conditions for high risk, and it advises school leaders to adopt those. Quarantine guidance we're familiar with. We've talked a little bit about this repeatedly in our most recent meetings, but again would remind the board and the public how close contact is determined for quarantining determinations. We are required by law to adhere to those designations. There are exceptions to that. Those are the 3 bullets that are listed here. Somebody who is vaccinated, someone who's tested positive within the last 3 months, or someone who is wearing a face covering appropriately during that period of time. Our most recent impact across the school system, remembering that this top line was near 200 plus at one point in our school system operations, and now for our most previous week, total of 15 and 18 resulting quarantines. Our quarantine number has hovered around 0.5 to 0.75. You see it's a little over 1-to-1 for this particular week, but in our most recent tallies, those numbers continue to be very low. I'm going to stop right here before I go into OSHA and ETS. Are there questions about the operational capacity or the specific data points associated with trend in community health in our community?
Yes, I have some.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'd like to go over some of the data that we have for positive cases and quarantines. The week of Monday, August 30th, that whole week, we had 147 cases and 237 quarantines. Did we have masks in place at that time?
The week of August 30th?
30th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then it went up the week of Monday, September 6th to 164 and 190 quarantines. Going on to Monday, September 13th, that week was 108 positive cases and 98 quarantines. The week of September 20th, it went down 90 positive cases and 88 quarantines. The week of Monday, September 27th, we had 51 positive cases and 46 quarantines. Did we do anything else during that time? Face coverings were still in effect. Did we do anything else like send half of the kids home or like lighten our load? No. So face coverings were in place previously, we were still climbing and skyrocketing And then now they're started to go down. The week of Monday, the 27th, 51 cases, 46 quarantines. October 4th, 52, 35. And it's climbed all the way down to this last week, 15 positive cases and 18 quarantines. So I just wanted to point that out, that we started at 147 positive cases, climbed all the way up to 164, and we still had masks in place at that point. So just looking at the data, to me, it would really tell me that masks make no significant difference in cases being positive or negative. They do result in fewer quarantines. I'm aware of that. But our cases continue to climb with masks on. So I feel like that's really imperative for this board to look at.
Well, I'd like to say something as well, and you're spot on about the quarantines. If we don't change that, we're gonna have a problem.
Agreed.
You know, that's the heart of the issue, is the quarantines. But I want to also, on page 3, Dr. Bryant,
Yes, sir.
of your slide, we had a meeting.
Page
August-
3 is in the third slide.
Yes, sir. Well, it's on my computer's the third. Maybe it's not. But anyway, it's a 7-day rolling average.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We had a meeting August 2nd, and the board voted for mask optional. August 2nd. Just make sure I'm looking at the same slide you are. On August 2nd, what was the 7-day rolling average?
25.
And then on November 7th, what is the rolling average?
19.
So it's less than August 2nd when we were mask optional.
Yes, sir.
Less now than when we were mask. Okay, just making sure.
There were no
we're
students
aware
in
of that.
school on August 2nd.
That's fine.
Okay.
Just wondering. That's all.
Good? Continue on.
The remainder of the slides, Mr. Craven and members of the board, deal with not the face covering operations, but school system operations. And so if you'd like, you can address the face covering guidance for the school system at this time, or I can run through the rest of the slides, whichever is your preference.
Yeah, so there's a couple good things, I think, in the data here. Of course, the transmissions are, like Jay and Amy just pointed out, it's at 19 now. But I think it's awesome, and that we only had 15 kids that were positive last week and 18 quarantines. And so there does have to be an end game at some point, right? And what is it? That's for us to decide today and from here on out. For me, I'd kind of like to look at this in 3 buckets. And the buckets are elementary school, middle school, and high school. Hey, quiet. This is us, and if we can't get quiet, then all of y'all can go. Got it? So, for me, I'm going to look at this in 3 different buckets because, the whole time that we've been in this pandemic, we've heard, the vaccine was going to be the way out. Well, we've had plenty of time for the vaccine for our kids 12 and over. They have an opportunity now to get a booster if their parents so choose to get them one. One thing that I am not comfortable with at all is giving any vaccines on our school property whatsoever. We don't do that for flus or MMR or pertussis or any of the other vaccines that kids are mandated to have when they come to school unless they have a religious exemption. And so as I look at the data and look at all the emails that we receive and think about my own family, I think that if the way out of this is the vaccine, then we already have a subset of our kids that are vaccinated or have the potential to already be vaccinated, right? And so for me, I believe that now is the time for high school kids to be able to go mask optional. And I would actually like to throw out a motion right now for that group of students for 9th through 12th grade and for the early college, it'd be 9th through the 13th grade or that additional year that they have, to go mask optional starting on Monday after we get back from this veteran holiday break. We have a 4-day weekend this weekend. And for me, I think that'd be a good time to get our teachers and our staff used to this, and you can send out the district-wide emails and the phone calls and everything else, the smoke signals that we send out, and we go optional for those students. And so there is a motion on the floor for high school students to be mask optional, and I'm taking this in three buckets, okay? For me personally.
Okay.
High school students, starting Monday the 15th, mask optional for Henderson County Public Schools.
I will second that motion.
So we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any discussion on this motion?
What about our staff?
Staff would be included in that as well. That would be included for your admin teams, that anybody that has had that opportunity to be vaccinated, I think it's time. That would apply to our sporting events indoors. That would apply for anywhere that right now you don't have students that are under the age of 12 that are can't be fully vaccinated at this point. So that is my motion. I have a first and I have a second. Are you clear on my motion, Dr. Bryant?
Yes, sir, and just again, per Dr. Revis's question, this would apply to anyone in a high school environment.
Anyone in a high school environment, yes, sir.
Or like Mills River Academy, Central
Yes,
Office.
absolutely. For our tech teams, for our maintenance departments,
Sporting
for our
events.
sporting events, for our security folks, Scott Massington team, for those folks, okay? Any other discussion on that motion? And we're going to take voice votes on all motions regarding masking from this point on.
Will the quarantine law still stay as it is now with this?
It will. And so you're going to see more quarantines if kids aren't vaccinated. And that is something that the school system is going to have to step our game up on. I don't think anybody really anticipated this, but we've got to do a better job of this. We've discussed that. This motion will create more quarantines. It's going to. Right? And we all, and I understand that. I get it. There are 3 rules up there that you can look at that will keep you from being able to have to go through quarantine, but that's your choice.
Well, you're also talking about 15 cases a week instead of 164.
You're absolutely correct, and that's why I'm making the motion I'm making.
And I just want to publicly reiterate this. The quarantine rules that are applied to our school and our students are the same quarantine rules that apply to places of business, houses of worship, everywhere. There are not specialized rules.
And we're not making them up as we go.
Right. And this is
right.
per the health department.
Right.
So I just want to make sure.
So we have a motion. We have a second. Is there any more discussion on this motion on the floor? If there is not, Mr. Bridges, yes or no?
Yes.
Ms. Case, yes or no?
Yes.
Ms. Holt, yes or no?
Absolutely.
Mr. Egolf, yes or no?
Yes.
Ms. Caskey, yes or no?
Yes.
Dr. Revis, yes or no?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, that passes 7-0. So now, with that same logic in place, I feel that the vaccine is if you decide to take it or not or whatever, you hate it, you love it, I believe that is the way out for our school system to get on the other side of this. So that leaves us in a really weird situation with middle school. Middle school, we have 646 11-year-olds, is that correct?
That's correct.
In our middle schools right now, in 6th grade, out of 1,000 or 960 something.
78.
978, sorry. Okay. And so for me, that puts me in a little quandary about should we, make it optional for those kids because they have not had the option to be fully vaccinated at this point. And for me, I believe that if we can give these folks the opportunity that have asked us for the opportunity to vaccinate their children, that January 1st for both middle school and for both elementary school will give people plenty of time to have their children vaccinated and have the second dose and have the 2 weeks that's needed to get the full whatever. And January, and that would allow us to go mask optional to start the school year after Christmas. Okay? So for me, I'm going to make a motion right now on middle school and on elementary school. I believe I'm going to make, my motion is January 1, mask optional for the rest of our school system. Teachers, staff, all those included. Everybody. Does anybody have a question about that motion?
So that's starting,
January 1st,
January
2022. I know nobody's in school then, but it matters because teachers will be coming back into the classroom to get ready for the next, well, calendar law. It's not quite the next semester, but for that next school year that's coming up after the break. And as of January 1, masks are going to be optional. And that's where I'm at on that one. So I have a motion on the floor. If there's a second, we'll go forward.
I will second that.
All right, we have a second on the floor. Is there any discussion?
The only thing that I am fearful of is we keep finding reasons to keep the masks on.
I'm trying to give you one to get rid of it right now.
Not till January, and then all of a sudden it's going to be cold, and then it's going to be, oh, we may.
Yeah, again, quiet.
It's okay, we got it. I just feel like it's going to be, oh my gosh, let me
Yeah,
finish.
sure.
Let me finish. That people will be like, it was a colder winter than before, and we're inside more, and I can't keep agreeing with the mask thing.
You're making it sound like it's going to be a vague decision where I think it's going to be data-driven. I mean, obviously, the kids come back from the holidays. It would take a huge uptick in numbers. I'm sure that Dr. Bryant probably already has that all figured out. I don't want to speak for him, but I don't think that anybody's looking for excuses. The excuse is give our kids.
But that's why I'm so afraid. I keep hearing the science, and I get the science from both angles, and then I say, look at the data, and you look at the data from both angles. I'm just like, it depends on who you talk to.
Purely for me is the vaccine, to allow these parents, if they choose to get their kids vaccinated or not, and it has just been approved this past weekend. If you decide to go to Blue Ridge Mall and have your kid vaccinated, and 3 weeks later you get them vaccinated again, and they're fully vaccinated by December, then good for you or not, whatever. Whatever you decide is fine, whatever. But for me personally, I've seen the data from 10 trillion different directions, and I'm over it. The vaccine for me is where this ends for me. And so that's why this motion is, I made the motion that I did, and that's why we have a second on the floor right now. But I'm willing to talk about anything else that you guys would like to talk about.
why
this
wait
motion.
till January 1 if 3 weeks from now?
Because you can't get your second dose. Let's say you got it today, okay? So you can't get your second dose until, what's that, the week before, or week of Thanksgiving, I guess, or the week after, something like that. And then from what I've seen from the CDC's website, from talking to Steve Smith, is that it takes 2 weeks after that second dose to be fully inoculated and to have the full protection from the vaccine. That puts us directly at the end of the semester. I believe it ends December 13th for year-round and December 18th or 17th for the rest of school, for the rest of the students. And for me, that's why I think that's my justification for this particular vote. I'd love to get them off today.
So what about all the other kids that have been vaccinated or their parents are choosing them not to be and they're in 6th, 7th, and 8th?
No, I definitely agree, and that's the quandary that I was speaking of as far as the 6th grade. You know, when I went to school, 5th and 6th grade was middle school was grouped together, and 7th and 8th was junior high, so you wouldn't have to worry about that because it's got older kids. But we have 646 kids that have not been eligible to be vaccinated, period, up until this past weekend. And so that's why I decided that that would be the justification for doing it on January 1, to give those parents the opportunity to vaccinate their 11-year-olds if they so choose to do so. And so that's where I'm at.
How many days of holidays are in here that nobody will be at school, John?
In terms of the Thanksgiving plus Christmas, you'd be looking at 3 days at Thanksgiving that are part of our calendar, and then you're looking at 2 full weeks for Christmas holiday, and then we return on a staff return on the 3rd, and then students return on the 4th.
17 days.
In 3 weeks, that'd be an extra week for your year-rounders as well. Any other discussion here?
I'd like to ask a few questions. Of the total, 15 total, do we know the breakdown of how many of those came from elementary, middle, and high?
We do, and we'll grab it for you in just a second. We'll pull that up for you. I don't know that off the top of my head.
And my second question, I think we talked about putting these in 3 buckets. Are we now just?
Yeah, I kind of threw in a second bucket because the thing is, I really want to allow the middle school to go to go mask optional. But when we asked for the numbers this weekend, I saw 646 kids. It's not a small amount as far as how many middle school kids we have. We've got how many total?
Total
3,000
roughly.
middle school kids. So it's not like a small portion of those kids. And so as I thought about it, this is what I thought was best.
Are those sixth graders in class with seventh and eighth graders?
Generally not. That I would think so. I would think, they would just have exchanges with those students potentially in the hallway or at, those kinds of things, but they wouldn't be scheduled for classes at the same time.
Okay.
I think I looked at the information that you emailed Dr. Bryant earlier today, and the take rate, meaning the people that took the vaccine for the second age group was like 37%.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty low.
The participation rate, correct.
Participation rate, yes.
In Henderson County.
Yes. And that doesn't signify just school, just age.
Correct.
Includes charter, private, homeschool.
12 to 17.
17, it kicks out those 18-year-olds.
That's right. Okay. So if the take rate is 37%, it is going to be, I would assume, probably lower because it's higher for each group. And if I just don't want us to start looking for reasons, like if we have a take rate of 10%, are we going to say, well, we need to keep the masks on for another month till people get, I just don't like continuing this because you ask for an end. This isn't an end, and we can change our minds, just like we did August 9th.
We can change our mind whether you make this motion, whether you make another motion, it doesn't matter. We can change our minds at any given time.
That's right.
I'm saying for me,
That's what I'm fearful.
that children are eligible to get the vaccine. Parents have emailed us just as vigorously and just as much as every other parent to wait until my child is able to be vaccinated. And from everything that I've seen and the folks that I've talked to in our community about this disease or about this virus, that this is it, right? And so this is it for me. It doesn't have to be it for you. It's it for me. And so if you don't believe in it, don't vote for it.
I call the question. Let's vote.
And-
Oh, sorry.
Well, I think for me,
All right.
also, it's about the numbers. And,
Sure.
I made a plea to this board at the beginning in August, let's keep schools open, keep our children in school by masking up. And we talked about that. We had a lot of discussion going back and forth, over an hour of discussion on that, because it was a heated argument. But we all know that when we bring children back together after a summer break and after Christmas break, I predict we're going to have another uptick. So if we're waiting for that magic number, I think we are missing the target, because when we come back from Christmas, we're going to have another uptick. And I know that we can meet on this, that we're required to meet on it every month, and we can meet on it more frequently if we need to. But for me, I think we've reached our goal of keeping kids in school and keeping schools open.
Amen, sister.
I don't think these numbers are going to reduce much more than this.
I think we need to put this decision back on the parents and let the parents decide. And go with optional masks and let the parents decide if they want my child to wear the mask or not. Then, at a certain point in time, their child may become eligible for the shot, the vaccine.
And I think everybody needs to understand clearly the quarantine rules.
Absolutely.
Because if we don't mask up, we're going to be quarantined if we
And
are
if you're
close
not
contact.
if you're not vaccinated,
Right,
especially.
right.
Dr. Bryant, can you give us your opinion on this particular motion, on what you feel is going to be best for our school system? I know it's putting you in a tight position, but.
No, certainly. Want to answer Dr. Revis's question for a second. Again, the data sets that we're looking at right now, this total 15, is 3 in elementary school, 6 in middle, 6 in high. That's what you're talking about, along this line, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Thank you very much. Again, as per Mr. Craven, your conversation, when we talk about our school system operation, we've prioritized 3 things. First for us has been this continuity of the educational experience for students and the mitigation of the things that put that at risk when we talk about face coverings and we talk about student participation. I think we have to fully recognize that when we talk about how we've communicated to our staff and our students, the vaccine option has been the one that we've shown grace to give people that choice so that they make a decision. The middle school piece is complicated because it doesn't involve, we have so many students that are not yet eligible until most recently at this week. At the same time, I would share with this board very candidly, and I believe I can say this on behalf of our entire leadership team, these numbers are as low as we could possibly have hoped for them to be at this time. And I think that it is a credit to how we have operated, how families have chosen to operate, and as you've heard from families, everybody does want to be at a space where we don't have to be in face coverings anymore. Every single one of us do. And so in this particular space, this board is positioned to give consideration to this in a space that they simply were not before. And I believe the question is whether or not we reserve a period of time for students and families to have an opportunity to participate in the vaccination. And I think it's appropriate that if the board chooses that, January 1st is the day, because you have to give people time to be able to participate. I will also acknowledge Mr. Egolf's concern. I think anytime you put a date in the future, there's fear that you won't get to that point. And I think we have a responsibility of meeting that expectation moving forward and being candid with the public that two things are bound to be true. One is face coverings become optional in our school system. The challenges that you've heard about with quarantining will increase, right? The challenges, and that's okay. You just have to accept that part of it. And the secondary piece is that we should expect that case numbers would change, right? And that the board understands that we do have the responsibility, again, as Dr. Riff said, to revisit this issue at least once a month, no matter what decision is made today. And more frequently, if there are concerns that the board has differently or wants to change something that's decided today. And so again, I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in, but I think that that's important to consider as we're weighing out both of those things.
So in short,
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't do short. That's, if you've ever gotten a message.
what?
yeah.
What was his
So
opinion?
in short,
Bottom line.
is this motion something that you and your leadership staff have thought about, could stand behind, and would work for you and your staff?
We certainly could support that decision.
Could you stand behind taking off masks for middle school and or elementary school November 15th?
If the board decided we certainly could see that work in middle school, I would be very concerned about elementary school families not having that option.
Okay. So the motion's on the floor. If there's any more discussion, let's discuss it now. We have a first and we have a second. Just to remind you what that motion is. Middle school, elementary school, give those parents a chance to get vaccinated, their kids vaccinated if they so choose. January 1st, masks become optional. Okay? Mr. Bridges, yes or no?
No, I think they need to go optional now.
Okay. Ms. Case, yes or no? Yes. Mrs. Holt, yes or no?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Egolf, yes or no?
No.
Ms. Caskey, yes or no?
Yes.
Dr. Revis, yes or no?
No.
And I'm a yes. The noes have it, 4-3. So let's do something else.
I'd like to make a motion that we make masks optional for elementary and middle school as of November 15th.
Second.
Mr. Bridges took that second. Any more discussion on this motion that we have in front of us? It's November 15th for all students. That would be all students, all staff across the board. Well, we've already got a high school, but for the rest of our students and staff across the board.
Correct.
So just for clarification, that would apply to all environments then, students, staff, visitors, everyone?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I just wonder how many students will be quarantined during Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Well, you know what? I heard a wise man once say, he said, you don't know how you look till you take the picture. Let's take the picture.
Any other
Let's take a look.
discussions on this matter? We have a motion made by Mrs. Holt and a second by Mr. Bridges. Is there any other discussion on this? All right.
I do want to say something. We are not, whatever we decide, if we decide mask optional, we are not saying no masks. We are giving people a choice. I don't want to be saying that the board is telling people, you know, take off your masks, because we're not. We're saying it's up to you guys. I just don't want to say we're promoting no masks. We're promoting a free choice.
Agreed, Jay. I think that's very prudent to point out, just like that young speaker pointed out earlier, you know, her parents need to have the choice on what they do for their kid. It's not our job to mandate a vaccine or mandate a mask.
Well, and along those lines, you know, we hear about people getting bullied and picked on and stuff like that. This board will not tolerate if someone makes fun of somebody because they have a mask on, or makes fun of somebody because they don't have a mask on.
Correct.
We're not going to tolerate that. I mean, that's not how we treat each other.
Well, I want to go a step further and say, I strongly recommend masks, whether they be optional or required. I strongly believe, I think our numbers show, and I take a little bit different perspective with your analysis, Amy. I think these numbers show that masks do work, and along with other things. Along with proper hand washing and cleanliness. But I feel like we have to always say we strongly encourage masks. But I think, in my mind, we have reached our goal. And I think at some point we have to step out there and try this, understanding that if children and their parents and youngsters who are making, particularly high school, those decisions on their own, if they are close contact with someone who has tested positive, that they have to quarantine, and it is what it is. We don't have a good support system for students being quarantined. We all need to acknowledge that before we go into this. And thirdly, that we're going to look at the numbers and keep our thumb on the pulse of the numbers to make decisions.
I certainly agree with that. Try it, you might like it, but I think we got to let the parents decide. Let the parents decide for their own child, whether what they want to wear a mask or not. So that's the optional choice that Ms. Holt just mentioned.
Amy, repeat her motion.
I moved that we make masks optional for the rest of the school system, just like we did for high school, starting Monday the 15th.
Do we have a second? Is there going to be any more discussion on this matter? If not, we're going to take a vote. Mr. Bridges, yes or no?
Yes.
Ms. Case, yes or no?
No.
Ms. Holt, yes or no?
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Egoff, yes or no?
Yes.
Ms. Caskey, yes or no? Dr. Revis, yes or no?
Yes.
And I'm a no. The yeas have it 4-3. Mask optional November 15th. All right, before we start getting any further, let's go into these OSHA emergency temporary standards as it relates to our employees. We'll let people leave that need to leave. If you're a teacher, I'd probably stay.
As folks step out, I'll just mention to the board what we'll be doing is crafting the messaging and the communications to our school administrators and to our school system this week so that people are aware of that. And I do want to thank the board for giving us an opportunity to make that effective date the 15th in order that those communications could come out so that folks have an opportunity to prepare accordingly. So we'll be planning to do so from there. Okay?
All right, moving on. Let's continue on with the OSHA emergency standards. So this is going to be our next firestorm. So as you all know, the federal government has kind of come down. It's been challenged in court. The appeals court has kind of held it up. We don't really know where we stand right now. So any employer over 100 people, you're going to have to basically tell your vaccine status. And if you're not vaccinated, you're going to have to get weekly tests on your dime. This is the next one. So please.
Yes, sir. And so with the passage of this emergency temporary standard, it's important to understand that it does have an impact across the country at this point. But specifically, I think it's helpful to understand through this frame, what does this mean for North Carolina and what does this mean for Henderson County Public Schools? Specifically, ETS, or this OSHA standard, does not directly apply to a state that has a state OSHA-approved plan, which is North Carolina. However, it does have an impact on how that works in terms of federal law requires that with an OSHA-approved plan, and again, that's North Carolina, that we have to adopt standards that are at least as effective as those federal standards. So that question begs, what does that mean? And so because North Carolina has an OSHA-approved plan, it means that we have to adopt a vaccination and testing requirement that is, quote, as effective as the federal ETS. That probably begs more questions than it does answers at this time, because we are the largest employer in this community with over 1,300 plus full-time employees. But right now, we're waiting on updated guidance from the state of North Carolina and specifically the Department of Labor. And so these two bullets are really important right now, because I don't know that we can say these frequently enough or out loud enough. Number one, North Carolina has to respond to this by November the 20th. So the Department of Labor has to decide whether they're choosing to adopt it, not adopt it, or go with some kind of modified plan. And then the state has until December the 5th to essentially enact its own standard in some capacity or form.
Let me ask you, is that true even if it's held up in court right now?
I will let an attorney answer that question.
It is not clear at this time what the impact is of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals decision, because technically the Fifth Circuit only applies to those states, and North Carolina is not one of the states covered by the Fifth Circuit. I have a feeling this will continue to be challenged, and we'll get some answers, some clarity to that. So right now, it's not clear. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And so again, currently, North Carolina has not released any details as to what that might look like. And to Mr. Egoff's point, there could be legal challenges associated with that. There could be different information that comes out or otherwise. Ultimately, along with our partner firm, Campbell Shatley, we're monitoring those updates. They're going to provide additional guidance as it comes to us. We don't know exactly what the application for that might look like. What we recognize is that it's important that school systems are aware that this could have implications for how we operate, and that we have to give consideration to that. What we commit to doing is informing the board, and then, of course, informing our employees as that becomes relevant moving forward. Any other questions for Ms. Lopez or myself about that? Again, this is going to be one of those we will have to wait and see what that means for us. I'm sorry that this is all I can provide, but I think it's important that the board and the public understand the possible implications of this for us as a employer.
Yeah, I appreciate you not asking our employees for their vaccination status. It is shocking that we had somebody in an upper leadership put a notice out to all districts telling them to go ahead and get started on that. I am 100% against asking for our employees to disclose their vaccination status, and not want, every bit of this, in my opinion, is about control. It's about controlling people, employers controlling their employees, and it's 100% wrong. It would make a ton of sense to me if a vaccinated individual could not get COVID and could not transmit COVID, that they would have to wear a mask or test weekly. But the federal government they're just singling out people that are unvaccinated. I mean, it's ridiculous to me that that quarantine people don't have to, that vaccinated people don't have to quarantine as well. This is 100% wrong, and I am 100% against it. And I say that as somebody who's been vaccinated. It makes zero sense to me. And it's overreach by government. We need less government control, not more government control.
Any other questions about OSHA? Okay, we will keep you informed as we learn more on that front. The final series slides just deal with what the board has just discussed here, is about expanded vaccine eligibility, and I'm going to specifically speak to this as it relates to our community and our public. We often get the question about whether or not vaccines are being administered at school sites. The answer to that is no. Students are not, they do not and will not receive vaccines at school sites. They are not host sites for that. They certainly cannot be administered in that respect, but it's a frequent question. It has been a frequent question that's been posed, and I think it's important. That group of kids is eligible now, and you'll see some of this material being published in our community and across the state and across the country for 5 to 11-year-olds, and specifically, because we want people to have accurate information, if they are interested in participating, where does that occur? That occurs right here. You can see the information from the Henderson County Department of Public Health. That happens at the Blue Ridge Mall in essentially what is the old J.C. Penney. It's Tuesdays and Thursdays for children that are 5 to 11 from 3:30 to 6:30. Again, every parent has the ability to decide what is best and most appropriate for their family, but this is not being administered at a school site, is not available at a school site in that respect. So I know the board chairs talked about that previously, but I want to affirm for the board, we served as vaccination sites when we were fully closed for the general public as part of a community-wide effort for people that wanted to participate. We have not served as a vaccination site for students at any time in that respect. And so it's important for them to know that that was the difference in that space.
Dr. Bright, may I ask the question?
Yes, ma'am.
So we no longer do flu vaccines in the schools?
We haven't done flu vaccines this year. Previously, we'd had flu vaccine clinics that were available to staff that wanted to participate, and some of our school sites had served as community flu vaccine sites, but we've not done that this year. No, ma'am.
We have done it before, though, with even our students.
We have, correct. That's what I mean, on our school site. Yes, ma'am. A final slide is a slide you've seen many times, and you spoke to that tonight as a board, that the plans continue to be fluid, and based on what we see the community health trends being, we will continue to work in coordination and respond, as well as updated direction from the state and the Department of Health and Human Services, and ultimately we will continue to meet our instructional obligations to all students. Glad to answer any questions before we shift to the remainder of new business, Mr. Craven.
Just one thing I think that you and Dr. Fry really need to look at in lieu of emotions. There's going to be a lot of parents that are going to be emailing us on the other side of this thing now, right? And they're not going to be comfortable sending their kids to school and whatnot. I think we definitely have to take a look at any options that we can give them if they so choose to do virtual instruction. I know that's not something that anybody wants to hear anywhere around here, but I think it's our duty, if we're going to take care of all of our students, to make sure of that and start putting the feelers out and the pieces in place if and when we need to move in that direction for any of those students that feel uncomfortable.
And we will be glad to do that. I'd like to make it very clear to this board that that is not something that would be in place on November the 5th.
Oh, I understand that completely. What I'm just saying is that you see the emails. we get hundreds of them a week.
Yeah, but I think now trying to throw something together for a virtual option, it kind of gives me a little heartburn why we would now look at a virtual option when we didn't look at a virtual option earlier.
Yeah, I'll be honest about the virtual option. I was a little bit disappointed that once we got out of this, that we kind of got rid of the virtual option altogether. I think that I still believe that there's always going to be an avenue for virtual education.
I do too.
I really do.
I do too.
Is it ideal? For me and my family, no. But for some folks, I think it may be.
For some students.
Right, it might work. And whether that's North Carolina Department of
Virtual
Public School, and giving those students that option. I know that's really only high school that has that option, but looking outside of the box, because tomorrow morning you're going to get inundated with emails saying that people aren't comfortable, right? So just keep that in mind. See if that's something that can, for those folks, if we need to help them or guide them to those directions of North Carolina, whatever, the virtual school, that we can guide them gently in those directions, right?
Right. I would just state again for the board and just kind of
Yes,
echo.
November 15th.
We have prioritized face-to-face instruction.
Absolutely.
That's how we built our staffing. That's how we built our emphasis along those lines.
Yep.
We're glad to begin some work so that we can do some research and this board can continue to have decisions moving forward. But that should not be an expectation of anyone in our community.
But I also want you to keep the reason that I'm putting this in place now is that we just went over this whole OSHA thing, right? If vaccines become mandated for our staff, we're going to have a problem, right? And there's going to be a mass exodus of teachers. Maybe not a mass exodus, but there is going to be a segment of teachers that are not going to be willing to do that. And so we're going to have a big segment of our students that are going to have no teachers. We looked at it every day or every board meeting about how many positions we need to fill, right? I mean, we do it every single month. And so I just want us to be cognizant of the future of what could potentially come down the line in in the need that we need to pivot that direction. Face-to-face is the way to go. I believe in it wholeheartedly, but just in case we need to pivot that direction for whatever comes our way.
I really would like for us to spend some time too, doing something a little more active support for our students in quarantine.
And I think that ties right together with it. Because how else do you do that, right? It has to be virtual.
Yeah, it has to.
How else do you
There has
do
to
it?
be some kind of way for instruction to be delivered to students who are on this.
It has to be. And so if we are going to, we know, everybody here knows that those quarantines are about to jump up. It's going to happen, right? So if those quarantines jump up, how do we support, multiply that number by 5, 6, 7 times? How do we support those kids? How do we support them? It's only going to be virtually. And we're going to inundate those folks that we've put in place to try to kind of bridge that gap. Well, we need to get on top of this as quick as possible because we are going to have a lot of quarantines no matter what. Does that make sense?
We will put.
I know it's not easy, man. I'm not putting you in an easy position. None of this has been easy for 2 years, listen. It's felt like 50. But I think that we have to think about all the decisions that we make and making sure that we are giving every kid a basic sound education, which is our constitutionally elected job. So just keep that in mind, okay?
If you go back to hybrid, you're gonna have a lot of teachers leaving too.
Well, I'm not saying hybrid. Don't do the hybrid.
Okay.
I'm not saying hybrid at all, right? Like, I think the hybrid is that we figured that out. But if OSHA comes and says we have to, every teacher has to give their vaccine status or have to get tested once a week on their own dime, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You know what that's going to cost?
Their own financial
Their own dime. They got to pay for it every single week. Do you know what that's about to do? That is going to be whatever. But we know quarantines are going to go up. We have not supported those students.
Do you know what, though? I think it's not going to matter whether they're virtual teachers or not.
What do you mean?
They're not going to not be able to be tested once a week or...
Well, from what I saw from some of the OSHA stuff and from the private industry, that company that I work for, if you are virtual, you could bypass the testing every week, and there's some rules around that. So all of this is going to be decided by the courts, but it's going to be handed down to us at some point. And I just want us to be prepared and think ahead instead of being a little bit more reactionary and try to be a little bit...
We could do a survey.
Yeah, no surveys. Surveys are done.
Please don't quit.
But yeah, I mean, Kathy, that's
Please
kind of my
don't
point, is that I want, we know the quarantines are going to go up. There's going to be some parents who are going to be like, hey, I want to go all virtual, and I want to be at school with kids that aren't vaccinated or aren't masked. I think we have to,
Well, I think that we're going to see this up and down.
yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, absolutely.
For a while, I think we need to have some viable options other than just posting things
Something on Google
on
Classroom.
the Google Classroom and expecting children to take new material and be able to work on it and understand.
I agree. Maybe you said it so much better than me.
And you know, I have dug into some of those emails when parents have complained, and I'm like, okay, we have a liaison. Have they reached out? And they're like, yes, I'm not complaining about that. It's just my child doesn't have the lesson. It was exactly what I think a parent was in here. Yeah, it was her. What she said today, yeah, they're missing that instruction. And that's huge.
Yeah, the only way that you're going to do the instruction is the hybrid method of teaching them.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
And I don't know if that means that we, like Amy has said, many times, is that stick a camera in the corner so they can see the lesson. I know that's not perfect by any means whatsoever.
One of the things they could do, but this would have to be very systematic and well planned, is teachers have archived probably their lessons from last year as an option. They could post those lessons. Right, Dr. Fry? And secondly, they could post some instruction. I know a lot of our teachers use Khan Academy and some of those things. But it is extra planning for the teacher, definitely. But it has to be planned to get some type of real-time instructional support.
If we wanted to spend lots of money, we could put cameras in every teacher's room and get what's going on in the classroom and have the child view it, but it's going to cost lots of money.
We have $22
That
million
would
coming
solve
from the
it,
federal government.
right?
I think if I could, just for a moment, in defense of our teaching staff,
Oh, yeah.
I understand what we're talking about. What we're asking them to do is everything, regardless of circumstance or situation.
Right.
And again, our teaching staff is working very, very hard to serve and support the prioritized face-to-face instruction. Does that come at great challenge for any student that's quarantined? Yes. That's why every person that has had a child quarantined has been frustrated by the experience. There is no substitute for live face-to-face instruction. Zero. To create a platform for virtual as an option to be considered in the future is certainly something that we can continue to organize and explore for how we best serve students moving forward. But it is important to note that those kind of things require great planning and deliberation and otherwise, and they are not resources that can be deployed at a moment's notice where our folks are right now. And so as the board deliberates and discusses, I want to assure you, not a day goes by that we aren't trying to better improve these very challenging circumstances that we're in, all the way down to the classroom level. Every teacher and teacher assistant and support personnel and volunteer, as you mentioned, is working to do that. There are a lot of days we get it right and there are a lot of days we get it wrong. But I do want to be very transparent again with the board about the desires of solving all of those pieces at the same time are a very complicated mix because it isn't business as usual. And I know you all know that, but I think it's important to represent the work that's being done by our educators every day. It is incredibly challenging. It's challenging for the students, it's challenging for the families, and it's challenging for the educators. I say that just to speak truth for what they deal with and how they do that. And to affirm for the board that we will continue to seek to improve the way that we do that, and the way that we might be able to do it better. Because per the board's decision tonight, the conditions have changed. And that means the implications are going to change, and we will have to be responsive to that change. We have worked very, very hard to try to solve the quarantine problem, and there are no perfect solutions other than what you see in this room right now, which requires thousands of dollars of resources in order that everyone can hear and see and follow what's going on. We don't have that luxury in every classroom space. And apart from asking a teacher to sit in front of his or her computer and not interact with the students who are in front of them, which is not a viable option for our folks, it's challenging in that way. And so I want to affirm, we hear you. We hear the responsibility that we have, and we have that shared responsibility as we move forward. But it is imperfect, and it is imperfect because these conditions are not perfect. There are things that we cannot control, but we will continue to work within that space to be better tomorrow than we were today.
And when students come back from quarantine, most teachers feel the obligation to catch those kids up.
Certainly.
So they're going back and doing that. It's not like the teachers just say, well, you're quarantined, forget it. Most teachers or good teachers will try to catch those kids up, so that's extra responsibility for them.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to, where are we?
I will talk about Johnson Farm now.
Johnson Farms, MOUs. All right, let's.
Just a pretty simple one, but pretty straightforward one. Just want to share with you. You heard from Mandy Gibson, our farm manager with Historic Johnson Farm previously, and what Ms. Gibson just shared with you are some of the highlights of the work that takes place on a daily basis. More importantly, I want the board to understand and the public to understand that we have a memorandum of understanding with Johnson Farm, because again, this is school system owned property. But as it relates to that, we like to be able to detail what are the commitments, what are the expectations, what does that partnership look like? And we have updated this to clarify those expectations. We have provided some basic revisions to it. But per a number of your questions, this is a long-standing agreement and partnership. And so the school system and the school board have provided direct support. You know, Johnson Farm now is its own nonprofit, identified in that way, and so they have a board that manages them in their direct operations. But given that it is school system property, we have an investment in supporting that as well. And so ultimately, this is just being brought to you for approval. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have, and if I can't answer the question, I'll be glad to take the note.
What has changed since our last MOA?
Really adding information that was part of our practice but not memorialized in that information. So things like who's responsible for the insurance, who's responsible for capital improvements, who's responsible for providing custodial support. Those were things, Dr. Revis, that existed, but they were not explicitly stated. And we felt like the MOU needed to state exactly what the relationship was.
I agree. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? If there are none, I'll take a motion.
I move the Henderson County Board of Public Education approve the memorandum of understanding with Historic Johnson Farm.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It approved. All right, next, now this is a lot of work. School improvement plans, Dr. Wendy Fry. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Like many districts across the state, Henderson County has transitioned improvement planning to the NC STAR platform. We are now in our second year of implementation. This platform is provided by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction at no cost, our favorite price to districts. Training sessions on the new planning tool were provided by Dr. Jeremy Gibbs, our regional consultant. Each school improvement team has assessed the key indicators of NC STAR and selected targeted goals for improvement, mapped a plan for assessing and monitoring the school's progress. I am sure you recognize some notable themes throughout these plans, which included horizontal and vertical planning, intentional scheduling to create dedicated time for professional learning communities, emphasis on high-yield instructional strategies, commitment to implementing with fidelity the multi-tiered system of supports, collaboration around common formative assessments, data-driven decision-making, increased outreach to parents and planned staff recognitions. When approved by the board, guest access for all school plans will be posted on school websites. Because these school improvement plans are living documents, updates to information are added after each school improvement team meeting. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. I just want to say that I couldn't be prouder of the hard work, the intentionality that went into these plans by our school teams and our administrators. I feel like there is great depth to these plans, and I'm very proud to bring them to you this evening.
Questions for Dr. Fry? No questions?
Well, this is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. I mean, it is a lot.
Was this the first year they had a transition to the IndoStar?
It's the second year. Second year, yes, ma'am.
All right, I think we're all talked out, so if there are none, no other questions, I'll take a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the school improvement plan as outlined by Dr. Fry.
Is there a second?
Second.
I think Ms. Case was second.
Oh, sorry.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you much.
Mr. Craven, if I may also share a new resource that is hot off the plate today. This is an example of district continuous improvement. I would like to share something just released by my colleague, Dr. Shannon Marlowe, our Director of Elementary Education. This went out to teachers today. As our teachers work to provide students with explicit and systematic phonics instruction to build strong foundational literacy skills, we are sharing an additional resource regarding articulation of phonemes for phonemic awareness and phonics instruction. This support is being provided in what you see here that we're calling a phoneme articulation library. This library of videos created by our very own Sabrina Pickle, our lead speech language pathologist, and Sarah Swansea, one of our elementary instructional coaches. These are meant to be used to support instruction of these most basic but vital skills. They can be used by teachers, speech language pathologists, ESL teachers, EC teachers, and anyone that is helping, such as Mr. Jay Egoff. I wanted to give him a big shout out for doing some amazing phonics instruction. I happened to get to witness it firsthand to support student learning as children practice correct articulation of consonant and vowel phonemes. What I want you to also notice is if you'll scroll down, notice these two different layouts. The first at the top, page 1 represents the place and manner of consonant phonemes as they're articulated or pronounced. And then page 2 represents what's called vowel valley, and it shows the order of articulation of vowel phonemes. And as you pronounce the phonemes from left to right, you'll experience a physical change in your jaw and how those sounds are produced. And this representation aligns with the science of reading research that you've heard us talk about a little bit. And our teachers will be exploring that more in depth in the spring of 2022. So with that said, if you'll scroll back up to the top, I want to play one of these for you. We're going to use the H, the letter H. And remember, this is our very own speech language pathologist.
Today, I'm going to show you how to make your good H sound. To make your H sound, your jaw is our main speech machine. Let's look at our mouth model. I'm going to make my jaw, so this part, my jaw, big by dropping my jaw down. The bottom part of my mouth is going to move and drop down. Ready? See how it drops? And then I'm just going to push air out of my mouth. I can feel it on my hand. H is a quiet sound, so no voice. Just keep it quiet and push a quick burst of air out of your mouth. Drop your jaw. Let's practice that sound together. I'll hold up a card when it's your turn. I'll go first. You kind of sound like a dog panting, don't you? Remember, drop your jaw, send air out. You can feel it on your hand. Great job.
So
We see the sound in Letterland.
We were doing the same thing you all were doing this morning. A leadership team, we were all doing it by the time she finished the video.
Very
Can you imagine the amount of work that went into that?
She
Yeah.
did tie it back there at the end when we cut it off back to our Letterland.
Exactly, yes. There are direct ties for each of these to Letterland. Thank you for recognizing that. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fry.
Thank you, Dr. Reves. And I think, as Dr. Fry was just sharing with you, this is a beautiful example of our folks doing this very work. This did not exist. This is now built based on our own folks recognizing how we can better serve and support students. And so really applaud Dr. Fry's leadership, Dr. Marlowe's leadership on this work, Sabrina Pickle, Sarah Swansea, what it takes to be able to build that entire library of saying, how can we better serve and support our students? And so thank you for letting us take a moment to share that.
All right, next up is going to be Bernie Sosha, 2 contracts he's bringing to us. Come on down.
Okay, good evening.
Or stay right there.
I'm going to stay right here.
All right.
Yeah, this is another one that we've had before. Anything over $90,000 needs to come to you for approval. And we have 2 of them this month. One is Clarity and one is Dunlap Construction. The first one, Clarity, as you see, it's for the EC department for sign language interpreter services. And I don't want you to be frightened by the dollar amount in the contract. It is $249,000, not for the purpose that we expect to spend that much money. It is to be prepared at a moment's notice, basically, if we have a student that comes in that needs these services, that we would have a contract in place at that moment to be able to contract with them. We've done that before with Clarity, and to give you a reference, we spent $27,000 as a whole district last year with them. So that is more in line with what we anticipate needing them for. But should we need full-time, it would then extend to a larger amount, and that's why we bid this out to the fullest extent that we could in case we did need to hire someone full-time.
So where do we get that money? Is that federal or state?
So right now, our plan is to be using some federal funds in the onset, but as we go throughout the year, depending on the circumstance, we would make that determination at that time.
Okay.
The other one is Dunlap Construction. That is for there are two actually, of the approved capital projects.
Do you know what page that starts on? I scrolled through it, but it's like, because the first one is really long. The other-
First one is really long. It is probably down in the
60s or something?
60s, yes, sir. Put a break in there so it would be much easier to see. As you can tell, that worked so
Yeah.
well.
Just separate them out next time if you wouldn't mind. Just different PDFs.
2, 1, it is on.
There we go, 66.
Okay.
So that is the auditorium seating, north in Apple Valley. Combined, we had a budget in there for $360,000. This contract is actually for $302,000, including with it an ad alternate for this boardroom itself for the seating change. So now it is 3 projects within the $302,000.
And that's to replace those chairs.
Yes, sir.
How old are those chairs?
People might want to stay longer if we do that.
That's true.
That's right. I have sat in those. They are quite uncomfortable.
Okay, so when will I know it's in here, and I know I read it. When will these seats be delivered and the project started and completed for these seats at the auditoriums for the schools?
I don't know what the completion date is going to be on that one.
Thought it was like start of the year and then finish in the spring, or start in spring in the summer, something like that.
I know in the previous conversation, they wanted to do them during a break opportunity. I don't know what they have decided on for actual scheduling with each of the schools for that time, but I will get that and we'll get that back to you.
Here it is, by the following June 30th, 2022.
Yeah, that will be, but the intent is to be done prior to that. That is just the end of the legal.
Oh, here we go, March 31st, 2022 for North Henderson, Apple Valley, March 31st, 2022. HCPS boardroom, May 8th, 2022. Now, all that is subject to delivery lead times.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that is the issue.
And then what is that? Is that spring break? No.
Spring break, March.
Yeah.
Is it spring break? I should know the calendar, but I don't.
We'll provide an update. You said the last line, which is the very important one. Everything is subject to lead times right now.
It is,
Yes,
and
sir.
the contract just states that it'll be completed by June 30th.
Correct.
Period.
Yeah, that's.
Dunlop's pretty good. I like Dunlop. So, any other questions on these 2 contracts here? Mr. Bridges, second left. All right. If there are none, I will accept a motion to approve these 2 contracts.
I move we approve the contracts as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Please note that Mr. Bridges was absent on that vote. All right, we're going to get into a discussion. You want to do this now, or you want to do your superintendent's reports? We're going to go ahead and knock out the panorama discussion now? All right, let's go.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In short, what I'd like to do is kind of work through some of the information that you're already familiar with, give you an opportunity to ask questions and give you an update on where we stand right now. Specifically, this board is well aware that we sent out a district-wide message to all stakeholders. That's everyone within our contact database as it related to concerns that we learned about with regard to the survey administration of the Panorama survey, specifically designed to be administered and approved to be administered to grades 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. But again, our communications on November 16th went out to our entire school district. The reasons are those that you're well aware. The survey that students had access to did not include, or did include, questions that were not approved specifically by Henderson County Public Schools. We reviewed and proved specific questions associated with that. The survey was defaulted to include a series of questions that were not on the approved list that were administered to students. And additionally, we learned that some students who had been opted out by their parents, because parents had the ability to choose as to whether or not their children would participate, had access to that survey. As I shared in my message, and I shared with this board, upon immediately learning that, we began a full-scale investigation on our end as it related to what were the internal controls that were not present, what were the vendor issues associated with that, and what needed to be communicated to parents and families on that front. It is unacceptable in our operation to communicate an expectation to parents and fail to meet on that. And in terms of sharing that information specifically, we messaged that out, gave parents an opportunity to follow up with me. Many have asked questions about what was the intent, what was the design, how was that information going to be utilized, all of which have been responded to. Questions about what were the survey questions specifically that were included and what were the ones that were never approved in the first place. Again, able to share that information as we moved forward. Specific to where we stand right now, it has been our formal request to have all the data invalidated, erased, and not archived. And it's critical to understand why those three words matter for us. Because when administering the survey and parents have an expectation for how that data might be used, anything that we deem to be a misadministration from a testing accountability standpoint or an ethics standpoint is a space where we're invalidating all the data. And again, I want to emphasize that, invalidating all the data, hard erasing all the data, not archiving any of the data. That has been affirmed in writing from the vendor provision. Additionally, we've separated our contract with that provision. One of the frequent questions that I've received as it relates to, are you still under an agreement with Panorama at this time? And the answer to that is no. And no public funds have been expended to that effect. We feel like this is a failure in that relationship, and given that failure, we recognize that that would not cost this board or the public or the taxpayer anything as it relates to what was expected and what ultimately has been delivered. When we talk about what our purposes are associated with that, the intended purpose was to have a sense of what student-specific needs might be at all of those grade levels. It was not intended to collect information that parents did not have an opportunity to choose or opt out of. And internally, our responsibility is to make sure that there are controls in place that prevent such a thing. Should the board ever approve a survey of this kind or any kind in the future, that additional internal controls are in place that would keep that kind of thing from happening. Again, we have investigated this to the fullest degree that we can. Again, wanted to provide you that update. It was important, again, to communicate that with all stakeholders. What I may be most grateful for is anytime there's a question or a concern, if somebody doesn't raise the question or concern, then we don't have the opportunity to follow up and look into it. And what took place on October 29th was I learned specifically about a concern about content in the survey, which produced an opportunity for us to investigate how that might be the case, because we had communicated to people in that respect. And it gave us an opportunity to immediately look into that and follow up on that effect. Again, it's very important to us to affirm for our parents and our families what they can expect and what they have the opportunity for students to participate in. And when that's not met, it's our responsibility to affirm that and to communicate that and discuss with them how we're moving forward. Finally, what it also has done is it's raised some very specific concerns about third-party vendor relationships and our ability to be thorough and diligent and deliberate about those relationships when the board considers contracts and how we do that work. Ultimately, we want to be responsive to those kind of concerns, and again, making sure that we're being very, very thorough in our vetting of any partner and then our expectations of how we do that work. I'll pause right there, Mr. Craven. Glad to answer any questions to go into further details as the board sees fit.
Yeah, this is a clear mistake on the part of this board. It's a clear mistake on the part of the leadership staff, and it's a clear mistake on the part of Panorama. And for that, I am truly sorry that this survey went out the way that it did. In the future, Dr. Revis said something that's resonated with me a couple hours ago, is that a lot of times we have these passive ways to, parents have to reach out to try to get something for the kid to not be opted into the survey. I think we should take the approach of a field trip. You don't have it signed, or your parent doesn't have it, and you don't bring it in, you don't take it, right? You're not going to the field trip. Every kid makes sure they have that field trip permission slip signed, right? And we should reach out the same way with these type of surveys, and it's the youth risky behavior surveys, all of the surveys that we're using. Parents should be first notified to go ahead and opt in to be allowed to come into these, and then also be allowed to opt out, not have to go searching for it to opt out. Is that going to require more work? Sure. But I think we owe it to our parents. We owe it for transparency's sake that we were not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. We were not trying to integrate any CRT or anything else into the curriculum. That was not the intent. But clearly, this survey that was delivered to some of the kids had content on there that we did not approve of. And I do think, we do have to make sure that we're checking those vendors, and when those surveys do come out, that we're checking over them before they hit the Google Classrooms, right? But parents need to say, yes, my kid can take this survey. Check, done, and then they take it. And then it's allowed to go into their Google Classroom. I think it's the only way that we can get around this type of mistake again.
Yes, sir. And we heard that feedback loud and clear as it relates to active consent versus passive consent or opting out. We want to put in every measure that avoids any instance of that kind and gives parents a more active role in choosing whether or not that's appropriate space. So yes, sir.
I would like to say I'd like it to be easy for parents, whether that's digitally responding somehow, because I know, like, for me, lunchprepay.com is life, like anything that I can do online to opt my kid into something, it is much easier, and I think it is for a lot of our parents too.
No, I agree.
Especially once you get into middle school, you can forget seeing any kind of permission slip. So, and if it's about a survey a kid doesn't care to take, it's never going to make it home. So I think we need to make it easy for parents to be able to opt in or / opt out. I also want to kind of give background to this. This situation is inexcusable, and it is, we're using highly sensitive information from our students, and what this company did was wrong. But I want our parents and stakeholders to understand that it's you and Dr. Fry, correct, that went over the questions. You guys approved questions. You marked out questions that they could not ask.
That's correct.
So, and I read over all the questions that you guys approved, and I didn't have any issues with them. I didn't think there was any hidden meaning. You weren't asking, or do you feel like your friends or your teachers are racist? I mean, none of that was in there. I think you guys did a great job. And Panorama specifically destroyed the trust that our administration had in them to deliver what they approved to be done. So I wanted to make that clear because I don't know how many parents know that the questions were gone through and you guys did what you were supposed to do. So I wanted to make that clear because, I think you guys did a great job in selecting the questions that fit our district's values, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And I think that, shame on Panorama for doing what they did. We now know that next time, if there is a next time that we do a survey, that it's got to be more diligent than what it is. So I'd almost like to see some legal action against them. I would be curious to how many school districts they've done this to.
Actually, I've seen quite a few in North Carolina, actually, same thing happened, that they've
Really?
survey, yeah. And so, not sure if it was internal controls on their part that were, whatever,
Yeah.
It's all speculation on why those questions that were omitted,
Right.
were supposed to be omitted, were continued to be allowed to be on there, and then those students that opted out, or those parents that opted out for their students, it was still in their Google Classroom. And so across the board, we need to relook at that plan on, if, no surveys anytime soon, please. But when and if that does become, we decide, because I do think there was some valuable information on there. That if we do go back to using a survey again, that we request that parents opt in an easy way, however that works out.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Going back to Amy's easy way, remember there were 20% of students who did not have the computer when we started virtual. So you've got to keep an easy way for all parents, not just some
Yeah, it
that
would
have the
be a
computer.
combo.
Right. And we had used Panorama before with no problems, John, is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
right?
One year prior, we utilized Panorama for middle school age students previously. Last school year, the survey was conducted among middle school students last year, and it was conducted exactly as designed at that time.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And you said you're taking steps if that doesn't happen again. Can you tell us some of those steps?
Yeah, certainly. As you mentioned, kind of one of the internal controls is logging in as a student and determining whether or not those questions match what was approved and what was proofed. And in this instance, that wasn't done. We didn't log in. We, as Mrs. Holt said, we reviewed every single question. We approved every single question. We saw the proofs of every single question. But when students logged in, they had access to a survey that was different than the one that we approved. And again, that's unacceptable in that regard. As Mrs. Holt had kind of just touched on, making sure that we have a really effective means of monitoring the opt-ins and the opt-out. One of the ones that we have streamlined this year already is the media opt-out that's done every time you log into PowerSchool right now. That is one of those examples of utilizing a much cleaner and easier to ensure. You know, we have 13,000 students, all with different positions on different issues and circumstances, and we have to make sure that we've got data that can be utilized properly on that respect. And then ultimately, and I think it was Mr. Craven mentioning this in the board, is that we want to ensure that parents understand if data is being collected, whether it's testing data or accountability data or specific teacher working conditions data, that it's being collected and utilized in the way in which it's been promised. And that's what's critically important to us.
I also left one thing out really quickly. I did also want to say that the board didn't direct you to make those phone calls and send those emails. But of course, we would have, but that was something that you when you called me on the phone, that was something you wanted to do. You felt like you needed to get out in front of it and be completely transparent and honest with parents. And it went a really long way. And I know, because I know you well, that's the type of man that you are, but I just wanted to publicly applaud you for that as well.
I appreciate that. I think we know our families deserve our honesty, even when we don't like what we have to say. And I can tell you, there wasn't not one of those words that felt good coming out of my mouth. But that is our responsibility to our parents and families, is to communicate transparently and with accountability, even when it means we're talking about something that we did not do the way in which we promised. And so I appreciate that, but that is the backbone of this school system, is we are not perfect. But when we fall short, we are going to communicate that and own that and move forward. So thank you for that, Ms. Holt.
Yeah, I wanted to acknowledge also that when we have vendors, obviously these are approved vendors. You didn't Google online survey and pull them out of nowhere. It's kind of like replacing the chairs in here. Do we need to sit in every chair to assume that somebody is not going to sit and collapse? I mean, I think at some point we have to pass that blame to the vendor who obviously failed us. I mean, I understand, and I so appreciated your transparency with that, but we also have approved vendors and we have trust relationships. And I mean, there's a high school being built. Are we going to check each and every brick? Are we going, I think at some point we have, the public has to realize that things like this do happen. You got right on top of it. You were transparent about it. And most people, I thought, were sending really, positive letters like, hey, thanks for letting us know, what happened right away. That's, that was, I thought that was the best move you could have done.
Tough conversation that day.
Yes, sir, it was. John was not happy.
Well, I appreciate, first of all, you taking responsibility. And that's what a leader does. When someone or others in your organization messes up, you take responsibility. I appreciate you doing that. And the other thing that's been said a couple times in the parent comments, how do we mend this trust and build this trust back? Yeah. And I know you've already been doing a lot of that reflection. You've articulated some things. And, accidents happen, mistakes happen. We learn from them and we grow. And so, but I appreciate you being that person to accept responsibility and want to set it straight.
Thank you.
And that's how we build relationships back.
Yes, ma'am. My grandfather told me once, the best form of an apology is a change in behavior.
That's right.
Nobody really cares that you're sorry, right? They just want to know that it's not going to happen again.
Right.
And I think we have that responsibility as we move forward, as we continue, that sorry is a starting point, but it's ultimately about building trust back with our community and continuing to remind people that we are going to affirm in that. I appreciate that.
Any other comments on this? All right, we're going to move on. Thank you, Dr. Bryant.
Yes, sir.
We're going to move on to our construction update with Mr. Carl Taylor. See, he'll come on down, Bernie.
I just had to get up and stretch my
I hear you. Sitting there for 2.5 hours and lock you up real quick on it. Yeah.
Crack, crack, crack.
But the Braves are the World Series champions, am I correct?
No, let's not discuss that.
They are World Series champions.
Okay.
They did have to beat the Dodgers.
They did have to
I don't
beat the
know if
Dodgers.
You may have missed that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it. I was actually there for game
That's right,
one.
yes.
Somebody else was there too.
Stolen.
Remember, you work for me.
Yes, let's move on to the construction update, please. Good evening, board members. Pleased to be here tonight to give you a construction update. So we will start with Hendersonville High School. First of all, when we look at the Stillwell building, the interior work continues as has been the case over the past couple of months. And so you see here, there's no change from the last update in that. The focus continues to be on that sprinkler system installation, HVAC work, framing and drywall, and then electrical data and intercom wiring. One piece inside the Stillwell that is new from the last update is that the ramp has been constructed that will connect Stillwell to the new building. And so as you look at both of these pictures here, you can see the ramp framework completed. The picture on the right does show that passageway connecting Stillwell to the new building. And you can see the door down there in the new building blocking that. But one day soon, that will all be open to where we can walk through and go straight from Stillwell to that new building.
Is that's the bottom floor?
Yes, ma'am. I believe that is on the bottom floor.
No, that's going to the, isn't that the ramp for the second floor going to the new building?
Yeah.
Is that the walk by the?
That's the walk-through.
That's second.
That's the second floor. Mr. Cottingham's older room.
Oh.
As we look at the courtyard, the work continues out in that area for the drainage. We'll have to, the drainage work that's being completed. You can see some of the concrete work as well as you can see the steps that have been constructed going up from that courtyard up into the walkway there around the new building. As we continue looking at the courtyard, the wall behind the home side bleachers, that concrete work or the block that has been laid in that area.
Are we going to put any stamping or anything on that concrete so it just doesn't look like a block wall?
I know that there's been conversations about the work that will be there at the new press box.
Okay.
And so that's where I think there is some design work being done there that may just be traditional stucco, but I can find that out too.
I mean, stucco will be fine as long as it's not the block.
Yes, sir. I'll look into that. Just as we look here also at from the courtyard across to the Stillwell building, just a fun fact for you in terms of that Stillwell building is there are approximately 191 windows. We're still getting the final count on that so that it is a firm number. So tonight I only stand by approximately, but we'll continue to get that final count on the number of windows.
Didn't they add, so they had covered up in the past a bunch of the old windows from when the building was originally designed. And then when they tore it down and tore the inside out, they found these old windows. And so then they put those windows in the place where they were back in the day. It's pretty cool.
Oh,
Really? It's really neat. They're really kind of skinny windows on the interior part of the building, but it's really fascinating.
And then here are some pictures of the basement there in the Stillwell area where drainage work is being conducted or completed in that area as well.
Is that the water running under that they found? Is that what that is?
See if I can get this. Yes, ma'am. So there is some water issues that they are going to have a drain pipe that runs underneath there. So that's what that work is going to be completed, where instead of that water building up around it in the interior inside there, it'll go through that drain pipe.
Has that been an expensive ad?
I can't speak to the dollar amount for that part of the project.
We are into,
Contingency?
yes, we are. We're not done with it, but we're into it, for sure. Two questions I have on the plan. Mike, Edney, I just want to make sure that any design plans or design changes rest with this board.
Yes, sir.
And if we decide to make changes, this is the authority that would make that change, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So on the outside of the Stillwell Auditorium, there's talk about what's going to go on those old doors. Has PFA, have they come back with any design changes for that or options, as well as that pass-through or the elevator or whatever they're going to show the tiles or whatever they're looking to do?
No final decisions have been made at this time. I know that both of those have been topics of discussion. We have our meeting tomorrow, and so those are questions I'll be happy to ask to see where we are at on both of those.
Final decisions are made with this board.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to some of our other MRTS projects that we have going on with Upward Elementary. I shared this information with you last month. This continues to be the same here, where projected start date sometime in the spring, with that project being completed in the summertime. Rugby Middle School continues to be sitting at that 99% completion rate. As was mentioned earlier, was waiting on a couple of supply items. Those supply items are items for the receptionist desk, as well as 3 doors that we continue to wait on. The delivery dates continue to kind of get moved along. So hopefully we're looking at a December date for the receptionist desk and a January date for those doors. Not quite sure where they're sitting, sir.
Tell them to take them in through Florida.
One of the other MRTS projects that was a part of this year's plan was additional warehouse space there at our maintenance facility. And so for that warehouse space that's going to be built, projected start date in this month for some of that site work to be completed, but the projected completion date has been moved to June due to material availability. Paving projects, as mentioned, our last one continue to be the same here at these 5 different schools, and again, those are set to be completed in the spring. And then a couple of roof replacement projects at West Henderson and East Henderson. Again, we're hopeful for a possible start date in March, as long as, again, supplies permit those projects to be completed. Here are 2 of the Henderson County capital projects that the board approved for this year's budget. One was already discussed in terms of what Mr. Socia presented to you this evening for that contract for the auditorium sitting at North Henderson Apple Valley. And then, of course, we're excited that we can also include this boardroom as part of that. So at next month's board meeting, I'll provide you with more details about timeline, that hopefully will be met if supplies permit them. And then the final, another project is the East Henderson, West Henderson Auditorium Sound and Lighting Upgrade. Hopefully we can have that out for proposals the first of the year. Both of those schools have asked that that work would be completed during the summertime, as both of those schools use the auditorium spaces for classroom space. And so that type of work would eliminate that opportunity. So they're going to put that off, but hopefully over the summertime is when that work would be completed. And then this next month hopefully will be the final freezer replacement update, in that I can tell you it's completed. We were hopeful that it would all kind of be set and taken care of at this point in time, but there were some delays in getting it installed. I believe at the end of last week, actually, the freezer itself was installed. So hopefully at this point in time, the acclimation process has begun. And then next week, we can put that into service.
I want to see that.
Big old freezer.
Yeah.
Anytime you want to take a field trip
Okay.
out to maintenance, you call me and I'll be happy to meet you out there, and we can take a walk through it.
I would love to.
At this time, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening.
Equity update, Dr. Fry. Welcome back.
Just one quick update that I'm very excited to share with you. Dr. Bryant and I recently participated in a virtual meeting with NC State University staff members who invited our district to participate in a grant that they are seeking from the Office of Naval Research for Cybersecurity Education Funding. Yeah, the project goals are 5. Number 1, to build the future talent pool of highly qualified cybersecurity professionals. Number 2, to create 2 scalable, transferable, and developmentally appropriate workforce development models, one for high school students and one for middle school students. That's where we come in. Number 3, to provide distance learning courses that expand participants' cybersecurity knowledge base and applied skill set. Number 4, to offer relevant career exploration and workforce readiness preparation. That's also us. And number 5, to provide structured support for prospective cybersecurity professionals who will enlarge and diversify future applicant pools. So part of the proposal work will be designing and preparing these programs for our students to participate in. These can be classes, summer camp, or guidebook. Still in the beginning stages awaiting funding, but we were specifically invited to participate. We hope that this grant will be awarded and that we can participate. We've even offered to pilot these programs in our summer learning opportunities. And the reason I bring it to you as part of the equity update is it would be for all middle and high school students, and it would be free. And that is, of course, a goal of ours to create opportunities and remove barriers. So more to come, fingers crossed on this. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Child Care Services, Mr. Scott Rhodes.
Congratulations on your Atlanta Braves.
Thank you. I won't say anything about the Yankees.
Thank you, sir. I want to say thank you to the 2 folks in the back who are here to listen to the child care update. Appreciate y'all hanging in there with us. I know, right? Before I get started, in our SGA meeting this week, we asked our SGA folks to really talk about some of the things that they're thankful for. So I think, with it being the month of November, I just want to say one thing. I'm really thankful to the people that I work with, especially him. I think you've seen the example of what integrity looks like. That's all I need to say. Appreciate you. Child care update for this month. Pleases me to be able to say, too, there are financial projections for the month of October. Revenues were $112,609. Expenses were $67,797 with an operational profit of $49,463.59. And then we also received another round of operational grant money of $108,000. That is a fun fact for you. That is an exact number, not like the windows at Hendersonville High School. You're going to give a fun fact. Let's know the exact number, not the approximate. Mr. Taylor, I know you're new to the leadership team. We bring fun facts that are the exact
That's a
fact.
bitter Yankees fan that mad at the break
know,
for,
right?
right? Is that what it is?
Well, hey, listen, the Yankees got beat, the Dodgers got beat, he and I are together, But I have you take any questions that you may have.
And keep up the good work.
How many combined Yankee championships are there compared to Braves?
27. Thank you, Ms. Kasky. I knew I liked
Help
you.
you out.
Yeah,
More than anybody in the room.
you're right. That's what they've been saying since 2001. Next up, financial updates or financial statements. Oh, okay. Because we want you right here, Mr. Sasha. There you go. All right.
Well, now I know why that one was, because this one doesn't light up. Okay, financial reports, real quick for you. We have 2 this month. We have local current expense as of October 31, and as we are being specific now, revenues totaled $12,511,067.45, while expenditures are $7,857,384.73. So what I want to point out about that is there's a big difference in there, and that is because right now we are getting ready to pay our local supplement in the month of November, and I'm really happy to say that this local supplement will include the 0.25% increase that we had talked about back in the spring. We will be including that in the supplement this month, so it'll be 6.5% and 8.75% for our employees. So that is exciting news that we're going to include that while we wait for the state budget to come out any week now. Someone pointed out at a conference I was at, they say
3 years.
Next week the budget's coming out, and eventually they will be right. The other one is the enterprise fund. We have childcare. This is through September 30th, so that does not include what Mr. Rhodes was just talking about. Childcare revenues have been $361,856 and expenditures of $296,404, giving them a positive balance at the end of the first quarter of $65,182. Something we are very happy to say we're on that side of the balance sheet this time. And school nutrition program revenues of $1,609,013 with expenditures at $1,955,039 have been made. While that is a deficit on the books of $346,000, I do want to point out that when the reimbursement does come in for September, is I say in October on the report, it'll be September, then that will negate the deficit balance. It's just, it lags so far that we haven't gotten that reimbursement yet for our September 30. They're way behind. They just
What
lag.
is that lag time between the feds paying us and then you receiving?
It's anywhere from 4 to 6. I would have thought we would have had that information by now, but they're still waiting on it, so.
Do we have any idea when the USDA is going to stop the program of feeding all the kids?
At this point, it is through next summer.
Through next
Oh, that's
summer?
right, yeah, it's to August.
So that's just something that this board's gonna have to be cognizant of once we get to that point, because then it becomes real again, right? It's real numbers and real deficits and and that's gonna be our next enterprise. You know, Mr. Rhodes, I gotta give you a shout out. You've done a heck of a job with the childcare. And we gave you a short amount of time and a short window to get that done, and you did it. I think this is gonna be our next one. Because salaries are gonna be increasing more than the $2.15 or whatever we charge for a lunch. And so we need to keep an eye on that coming into next year if the USDA does not approve the full grant again.
Yes, sir, and as you know, we were.
We were there.
We were right there, right before.
So we just have to continue, what was it, the second breakfast or the second chance breakfast is what it was that what it's called?
The universal, yeah.
And making sure that people are filling out those free and reduced lunch forms. Please fill out those free and reduced lunch forms. It's gonna be really imperative next year.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
All right,
Sweet. Any questions about financial statements? Thanks, sir.
appreciate it.
Can you fill out those free and reduced forms online?
Yeah, you can. Is it on your Power School or where is it?
It's a login. There's an access.
That's a bit, can we link it to Power Schools or link, what do we have what app do parents use the most of for our kids? Do we know that?
You mean student information?
Yeah, for
you
student
talking about
information, for
Twitter
Power
or-
School, or for, the lunch thing that you were talking about. I used to use it all the time
Lunch,
when I had to pay the kids' lunches, right?
I would
The Power School would probably be the number one.
Your kid must not get extras in the lunchroom.
I cut it off. I was like,
have to
nah.
use it.
He had like 3 Rice Krispie treats, and I was like, no, sir, we're not doing that. Anyways.
Well, I think as you've mentioned, Mr. Craven, one of the very real future challenges is the impetus for filling out that form is related to whether or not the meal costs anything.
Absolutely.
And in the time of universal reimbursements, there's no reason to fill that out.
Right.
And so when we talk about transitioning away from
It's gonna be a problem.
it's going to be very important. And our child nutrition director and leadership and school systems across the state are talking about, so how do you make sure, because it drives funding that isn't just related to child nutrition. So recognizing how important that is and encouraging people and educating people about the way that affects the school system operation is one of our challenge tasks ahead, is that we do that and that we make it as easy as possible and we create as much opportunity for folks to know what that is, because it isn't just about free and reduced lunch. It affects a lot of other things for our school system, and so
I think we're gonna have to
Title
really,
I's gone down, correct, since, people.
part of it.
we have to educate folks coming into next year.
I
about
know.
that. We
And
have
also
to, we have to, we have to.
incentivizing it. I mean, I used to give the kids a free homework pass when they brought it back in. I mean, that's, so they're pressuring their parents, fill this out, fill this out.
What did you say? Say that
I
again?
gave them a free homework pass when they returned it. I mean, it was the
Well,
easiest
I
thing,
did the
didn't
same.
cost anything.
Free homework pass, sign it right now.
We will work through
Free
how we make
cookies.
sure that we take care of
My
folks.
wife bakes.
That's true.
for
That's a lot of
13,000
cookies.
People, that's a lot of cookies, right?
Just for the reminder, you can just keep
You just volunteer that.
A quick point of clarification, when you said we're doing universal feeding through this coming summer, you talking summer of 22?
22, yes,
Okay.
ma'am. That's correct. Allows us to continue to feed everybody through the summer.
So we'll have our stops this summer, and then for summer school and all that jazz. All right, general operations, let's wrap this puppy up.
We've talked about most of these, but just a couple of notes again. November 11th, honoring, recognizing, lifting up our veterans. We've got programming going on across our school system, much of it happening on Wednesday in many of our schools where we are recognizing veterans in our community, not just veterans in our school system, but remembering these are the men and women that are the pillars of our armed services. And so we celebrate them, we honor them, and we recognize them, continue to do so. A reminder as well, and you heard from a teacher this night, November the 12th is an optional teacher workday, again, across the school system. So it's a non-student day for students and an optional teacher workday for all the remainder of our staff. You see what the rest of the month looks like there. I would, again, appreciate the moment of silence earlier today, Mr. Craven, for our school system. It certainly was a challenging week last week, the loss of any of our employees. Especially when we think of Mrs. Gordon and we think of her family. There will be a celebration of life for her on November the 14th. That's this Sunday from 2 until 5 p.m. Again, we continue to lift up her family and all of those school families that held her so close, remembering she served with this system for over a decade in so many roles. We also celebrated Caroline Maxon earlier. Appreciate you bringing her up, Mrs. Case. I want to mention, if you've not seen the newspaper already, Jerika Denal, who is the school resource officer at Hendersonville High School, is now one of the nationally recognized RISE Award winners. There are only 3, so we talk about people in that highest order. Ms. Denal is truly an outstanding school resource officer and a model of law enforcement. I like to really celebrate her because she was a student at East Henderson High School when I was there. And so I've known Jerika since she was a student of our system, and we talk about what she represents in that respect. I as well will tip my cap to the Braves begrudgingly as a Dodger fan. Congratulations to Braves fans everywhere.
It's better than the Astros. Come on now.
That's right. Anything's better than the Astros. Right. We'll say that. And finally, again, this is the month of gratitude, as Mr. Rhodes mentioned. There is no finer school system. There is no better place to work and serve, even on our most challenging days. And I applaud you all for being courageous leaders in our community, for being able to have the dialogue in the space that you do it, in the way that you do it, honoring and respecting each other through this most challenging work. It is an honor to serve alongside you, and I speak on behalf of the entire leadership team in the school system that we're grateful that you choose elected leadership right now, because it would be easy to say, I don't want to be in that space. And I'm sure you've all felt that at some point. So I want to say thank you to you. Thank you for choosing to be here, and thank you for choosing to do the hard work and representing your community and being challenged in those spaces. We're grateful to you every day, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Please.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.